Welcome back to the Dr. SuperCoach podcast, proudly powered by Code.
Welcome back to another episode of the Dr. SuperCoach podcast. You're on again this week with JB, and I'm joined again by Pistol. Hello, how are you? How was your week, of course?
I'm really scared of this podcast because...
Scared?
JB said before the podcast, he's like, I'm coming up with the run sheet. Let me do it all. And you just turn up and you have a nice time and I'll do all the planning. And I have no idea the topics that he's pulled for this podcast. So
let me tell you right now, it's not all going to be a nice time.
Great. Well, that's why I'm scared.
We've had an average start to the season, which you don't really learn how good your start is until after like 4 or 5 data points. Then your rank sort of evens out. You sort of know where you're at, right?
Sure.
So I think it's harsh to say week one, we've had this horrible start. We've got every pick wrong, because I don't think that's true. And 1 week data point is not accurate. Like it's not going to be the be all and end all. It might not, at least. But I've got a lot to hash out, and I think I'm.
Are we going to fight?
I'm just going to. No, we're not going to fight. I think I'm just going to. I don't know. I think I'm just going to air some stuff out and challenge some ways of thinking.
Right.
It's going to be interesting. But before we do that, I've got a long list of players we have to talk about. We're going to obviously attack all the specific issues that people might be having with their teams. And then at the end of the podcast, make sure you're tuned in, because it's not going to be crazy. There's just going to be some discussion, which I think people will find interesting. But before we get into...
Are you resigning? Is this like a...
No. I'm not going
I don't know what's going on.
I wish I could quote Jordan Belfast when I say I'm not leaving, but I can't quite do it word for word, but I'm not leaving. Well, with the explicit in between.
I was going to answer the second part of your question of how I went this week.
Which
is probably what people want to hear.
Maybe not.
It was okay. I felt like my team is in better shape than I scored. A couple of mistakes on my end. Laird C, the whole jelly scenario, starting him again and getting KO'd. Great. Jones on field, obviously not good. I had Cam McKenzie on the bench after a late reshuffle, which obviously wasn't good. I mean, I had Setterfield on field for him, and that's what did it.
It worked out okay.
It kind of worked out, but it wasn't like... I didn't really feel like there was a big gain. So I ended up with 1961, but realistically, in my shuffle, when I brought Witts in, and I said, I wish I had my VC. I'd VC him, and look what he got, 140, and didn't have my VC. So I've lost 90 points right there and there just on that captaincy decision. So all in all, I felt like my team's a lot better than the 1961. It was just one of those weeks, and I'll cop it, and looking forward to round 2.
Yeah, well, you scored 55 points more than me. So I scored 1906, and
ouch.
I think this is probably the worst rank I've maybe ever had in SuperCoach. I don't hate every aspect of my team. I hate a lot of my team, which we're gonna get into a little bit. So I'm not hiding away from my score though. It was a really bad score, a bad week, and I made bad decisions to start the season. So I'm keen to get into it all. So before we do that, I'm going to do the Patreon shoutouts. Just a few this week. We have Cam Merrick signing up, Juddy's Juicy Fruits. I might have to check that guy's profile picture out. Tim Robertson, Corey Bicknell, Chris Peacock. I believe this says Emo Nightmare, but there's a couple of 3s on either side of this. I'm just assuming they're E's.
Yeah, could be
got
3
Roy
nightmares.
signing up. No. Well, that would be 3-mo Nightmare. So I think it's Emo Nightmare.
Yeah, it could be.
Then we got Roy signing up, Nick Schroeder, and Gav. So welcome new guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate you
Thank
signing
you
up.
to
And then
all
I
the
believe
invites.
we got some Cancer Council donations.
We do. Thank you for reminding me. We got a couple. So first up, it was Sad Boy 55 has donated, saying...
Wait, were the first 54 Sad Boys taken? Is that what's happened here?
I mean, So generous donation, so I'm hesitant to say anything. Elliot Yo injury setback equals I donate. So I guess my question then becomes, Sadboy55, if Elliot Yo has another injury setback, do you also donate? Because that's what you've put here. For every Elliot Yo injury setback, I donate. Mark P says, for some helpful advice and being silly enough to consider Jeremy Govan, or might revisit that. Thanks, Mark P, for your donation. Dennis says, huge thanks to JB Pistol and Cheese for all your work over the pre-season, and then has doubled the donation or tripled the donation, says, I couldn't leave it so short at the 25k mark, and has helped us crack $25,000 raised for the Cancer Council since the beginning of the podcast, which is pat on the back to the entire community. Thank you so much for helping us get there. That is just an outstanding amount of money and achievement, and so glad we could do something positive with all of our talking nonsense. So congrats, and before you say anything, JB, Spicer has decided to donate 50 cents for every defender that kicks a goal through the whole season playing in defense.
Josh, yep.
So thank you, Josh, and Spicer here. It says, obviously just listing out the 10 goal kickers, Giath, McKenna, Rich, Doherty, Ridley, Lloyd, Florent, Mitch McGovern, and Redmond times 2. So thank you very much. That's a really cool idea for a year-long donation. Really appreciate it.
I like these year-long donations. I think we have to find a way to reward these year-long donations.
Yeah, we got to
I think that's on us. Yeah, I think Josh has to have something in return for such an awesome pledge and for doing it in such a creative way. So I've just put us on the spot with that. I've thought of that off the top, so apologies, Pistol. But we got to look into that. But thank you so much for your donations to everyone. Now, there's no more housekeeping. We're going to jump into the podcast. We're going to start off with some easy topics here, Pistol. I've written down just a list of names that I generally might have forgotten a couple of people, so we can revisit anyone who you want to chat about as well.
Great.
But we're not going to do game by game. We're not going to talk about players who people don't care about or players with 5% ownership who might have caught our eye.
I got a couple with under 5.
Trust me, so do I. We are going to talk about those guys.
Oh, okay.
They have to be predominantly owned in our circles at least.
Right.
So let's start off with the first name I've got on my list here, Jacob Hopper. So he played against Carlton on the Thursday. I personally love Jacob Hopper. I've had him in a keeper league for 2 out of his last 3 years. So just the 2 years prior to this one. I really enjoy how he goes about it. I think he's a really good player. I think he's a star when he's fully fit. I cannot for the life of me say that he was fully fit on the Thursday. He looked not at his peak fitness. He looked slow. He got caught holding the ball, and not just caught holding the ball, but like streaming through the middle, and almost didn't know how to throw the ball onto his boot and just get it forward. It's like he sort of just his brain malfunctioned and he just got caught holding the ball instead. It was so weird, and I say this with love because I know how good Jacob Hopper can be, but that was not the Jacob Hopper that we know on the Thursday.
But why?
I don't know if that means we have to get rid of him or.
Like, why do you think that happened? Why? Yeah, why do you think that happened? Because, I mean, he had the whole preseason to train.
Yeah, well, it was an interrupted preseason or a managed preseason where he was at some training sessions. He was jogging laps. He missed a couple of the intra clubs, but he played in the actual preseason game. So it was managed. I honestly couldn't tell you. He was obviously out of the game last year, which hence his low price. So it might have just been the rust. I personally, I'm going to say straight off the rip, I don't think he's a trade out this week. I think we at the very least need to watch him again and see how he goes next week. It was a very, very, very hard game to come back into, I think. Richmond-Carlton obviously was a draw, fiercely contested game. Carlton, very good list as well as Richmond. So of all the games to get thrust back into, this was a tough one. But boy, did he look slow. Did he look 1, 2, 3 steps behind the more in-touch midfielders that game. And if he shows that again next week, it might just take him far too long to make the cash that we require. If he bounces back, then all is well. I'm definitely in the hold camp this week. But you watched the game as well, so what did you think about Hopper?
I thought he was slow. Like when I say slow, I'm talking like slower than Jobe Watson slow.
Slower than Tom Mitchell, like slower than, so many players that we think is.
Couldn't move. But to be honest, in the practice game, the preseason one, he was also really slow. And I know he scored well Supercoach-wise, but ignoring the scores, he kind of looked the same. It's a hard one because the position is there, the role is right. He just looked
the role was
slow.
good.
And I do agree that I think that's going to take a bit of time to build, and that might lead to him not being a Supercoach pick. But there's a big test this weekend because they play Adelaide, and the Adelaide midfield was very quick, like super quick. That was because Laird wasn't there he was there, but he wasn't doing much. Rochelle was very, very fast, and they looked very, dynamic in that first half. And I just want to know if he's going to be able to keep up with them. Like, it'll be very interesting to watch and just see how that midfield kind of works against the Crows, and I think we'll learn a lot from it. So I'm in the camp.
You're firmly in the hold camp.
I am. I'm firmly in the let's wait and see and give him another week, because there's nothing wrong than, choosing him and then thinking, he's rubbish, trade him out, and then the person you trade him to is, becomes rubbish. Raul from last year was really good the first 2 weeks and then basically faded off the face of the earth for the rest of the season. So you don't really want to do that with your pick, and at the same time, you don't want to trade him out and then he has this string of 90s and you're like, oh, well, that could have been me. On paper, Adelaide is meant to be a good fixture, so I'd like to just see it with my own eyes one more time, and I would consider culling him if he's very bad again next week, so we'll wait and see. Okay.
So this is what I got to get to. So this is going to come back around later.
Sure.
So Hopper... So what do you think, what level of importance do you put on trading Hopper out next week if he scores sub 65?
Sub 65 would be bad.
Say he looks very, very similar to what he did this week and has another 65 or lower score. 70 or lower even.
It depends on the available options, right? Like if other mid prices look good, then high importance on trading out. But if the other mid prices, let's say Juan Francis falls over, Ziebell looks bad. Like if there's just not the options, then I guess a lower importance. Or, it depends on the rookies as well. There might be amazing rookies and you're like, oh, well, I can just trade him to a rookie and bank monies. Lots of monies.
Okay. The next guy I want to talk about is Asava Radaglia.
Great. He... Obviously, his role and job security got absolutely shored up when Geelong just kept having their players fall over. And he's going to have amazing job security for the next month. I believe he got coaches' votes as well, so the coaches clearly enjoyed watching him. But his role does not have much scoring potential involved in it. I think he's fine cover. I definitely not considering restructuring to try and bring him in. I think it's totally fine if you have him. Good job. That's fine, and he'll make you money. And if you don't have him, then that's fine too.
Is he going to make you money?
I think he'll make money. He
scored 55 this week.
Yeah.
He's 175-ish K.
Yep.
I thought this week he had 19 Dream Team.
Yeah.
So I wonder if he's going to make... Do you think he's got 150K in him?
I think he's got 100K in him.
Okay, so say he gets to 265, 270K, as a good case scenario. Is there merit in moving him to someone 50K cheaper, like Chandler, for example, from Melbourne?
Yeah.
Is there merit in doing something like that? Was he that bad, do you think, score potential-wise? Or do you think he's an easy, just hold him and just watch him do his thing? Is there any urgency on him whatsoever?
I mean, we get to see another week. I definitely wouldn't be trading in anybody
this week,
a rookie, because we've got, I think there's going to be 4 Melbourne ins this week, so we'll see if Chandler survives, and then you got Pickett coming back after his 2-week suspension as well. So I'm not really sure Chandler's going to survive, but if Chandler puts out 110 next week, it's going to be hard to argue not to make that trade. But at the same time...
So no urgency this week, though?
No, and also you can't forget he provides value in just having ruck cover. So you don't need to get the 150K from that spot. He provides other things.
Now, obviously, Tom Stewart subbed out. Has been confirmed a meniscus injury.
Yeah, to trade.
about 4+, whatever it is, or around 4.
There's no world in where you hold it unless you're playing league
no
only.
world whatsoever where you hold him. Who caught your eye as the main guys you should be looking at getting in? So I saw. I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Just give you a second here.
Dude.
I saw 2 guys. One of them is up. One of them is down. So I think you can see where this is going. I thought James Sicily has the potential to average 29 marks per game this year. He was so good and didn't break the head off the score, but still looked so capable of scoring 130 plus in every loss this year. And then down below, I saw Nick Dacos, obviously. So are you trusting to go down, or are you just wanting to sideways this one?
I mean, by asking me this question, I'm going to have to talk about Nick Dacos, right?
Well, he's on our list to talk about next.
Well, then I'm going to be doing it. But those 2 are the best 2 options in my mind as well. I mean, Sicily, during do we just call it the Elliot Yeo reshuffle, because my team changed significantly during that time. I had Elliot Yeo. Obviously I had Elliot. I had James Sicily and Doherty as 2 defenders because I was really keen on Sicily and his high floor, and that hasn't changed in any way. But I ended up dropping him down all the way to Stocker, and I went Yeo to McKenna. So I went Jones D2, real shallow, because I wanted to beef up the midfield and forward line. And I don't know if I would do that again, but either way, if I wanted to, let's say I had, Stewart, I think it matters, JB, if you have Stewart D1 or D2, really. I feel like you want that rock, at D1 if you can. So, the Sicily or the Doherty type. And if it's at D2, I think you can play it a little bit cheaper. The 500k mark, we saw Hayden Young score really well. Ridley scored pretty decently. And Dacos, I mean, if I had to rank them, I'm probably ranking them Dacos, Ridley. I don't know, Ridley and Young are pretty similar in my eyes.
They're very similar. I'll let you get away with saying the same for those guys.
Yeah, that's honestly, I mean, the thing is, Ridley was really good, super good. I thought it was really impressive, and he only scored, 107?
And he kicked a goal on top of that as well.
I don't know where he's going to have those 125 plus games to bring his, he needs that ceiling to get a bit higher, and I can't really see where that's coming from. So that's the downside of Ridley, whereas Young, the floor is going to just be lower than the floor of Ridley. So that's kind of why I'm thinking they're somewhat similar. But Dacos, look, I'm going to talk about Dacos quickly, JB. We'll try and keep it quick.
He's the next one on our list, so go your hardest.
So the pros of Dacos is the kid wants the ball all the time, every day of the week. He's probably, I'm sure he's sleeping with it, under his pillow every night. He was...
Sounds uncomfortable.
He was demanding it from every player the entire game. And one, you love that for SuperCoach. That's the best, watching your player desperate to get the ball at all costs. And 2, over the course of the round, whilst we probably didn't see as many taggers as we may have thought going into round 1, you seeing how Geelong didn't give him any attention and Dacos dominated, it's hard for me to believe that he won't cop attention, for the rest of the season. It's not like saying a hard tag, but at least someone being aware of what he's doing, where he is. And then in the same breath, I don't think that matters. He's just going to get the ball, because if he's not getting the cheapies, he'll put himself on kickouts and he'll take all the kickouts so that he's getting the balls. He will find ways to score. And looking at the Collingwood run, I'm only expecting really those, I guess we'll say, those heavier tags to come round, 5 and 6, against St Kilda and against Essendon. And sure, he might score 70s or 80s, but he's going to put in 120s until that point. So I think I just want that upside from that pick. So yeah.
Well, that's the important thing. So I look back to someone like Jake Lloyd in his prime years. No one went near him. And I think forward taggers are more prominent in the game today.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also someone like Tom Stewart, it took them 6 months to figure out that he might be someone worth tagging. And at that point, he'd strung together a bunch of 170s and like really, really won them games. I think Dacos is capable of doing so, but he's not like an intercept marker, and a lot of his touches are little, get the handball and kick it 20 metres when the guy who handballed it to you probably could have made the kick himself, but they just like it in his hands. And I get it. In terms of game plan, I'd want to get it in his hands as much as possible as well. But I just don't think I don't think his floor is going to be 50 with a tag. I think it's going to be 70.
Yeah.
And the ceiling without a tag is like almost, it's probably top 5 in defense, maybe higher, which I think is super unique. He's 500K. So I think we messed up in the preseason, you and I, in thinking that the tag was as important as what it was for Dacos, because he's 500K. We talk about the 600K guys, the uber premiums who are going to lose money, etc., get tagged, and we're like, we really don't want to lose money on those guys, and that would suck. And he's 500K, and he could be quite easily, in my opinion, a top 6 defender. And it's so silly because I thought this in the preseason, and I think about 2 days before the season started, I put something in one of the chats in Slack and said, I think we might actually be underrating Nick Dacos, but I'd liked my structure. I hadn't changed my team in 2 weeks, and I just sort of neglected those thoughts. And that was just a really, really big error by me personally. And I think it's something that needs to be rectified. Like I'm looking to trade Dacos in now, and I don't have a Tom Stewart injury.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things that I've noticed, the trends of people, wanting to hold their trades for another week of data, and I totally get it. But in saying that, what are you going to see from Dacos that's going to make you not want the pick? Like, you already know the risks. Do you think Port are going to tag? Like, Port don't typically forward tag. I mean, they might, but at the same time, every club might tag Dacos. And if they don't...
Do you want me to actually answer that?
Yeah, sure. Do you think they're going to tag?
So there was an article that came out, I think today, where someone interviewed, I think it was Nathan Bassett, one of our assistant coaches, and said, Dacos had a great game on the weekend. What are your thoughts? And they said, look, we're going to put time into stopping him, or at least playing to his weaknesses rather than his strengths. And I think what that means is, like, the guy in the mark takes those 5 steps back and they're ready for the hand pass to Dacos so they can go and put pressure on. Or we force him onto the side that he's not comfortable kicking on, or force him to kick down the line instead of pick off little passes.
Force him to defend Rioli.
Yeah, well, something like that would definitely help, I think. But not in terms of like an actual, we're going to sit Lachie Jones or Power Pepper on him, because Port don't do that. Jones kicked 3 goals on the weekend. Pepper was one of our best 5 players on the ground. Those guys, we don't tend to have players sacrifice their games just to try and tag an opposition so one of their other guys goes crazy instead. It's just not something that Port have done for years. And I know Drew acts as like a cooler in the midfield, but we tried to call Lachie Neale for the last 4 years. And the best way we did it, the most effective way we did it, was this year, when we didn't try to call him, but instead we played our game and just beat them in the midfield with our midfield, with that, rather than putting 2 guys on him or bringing Sutcliffe in to sort of tag him. So no, I don't think we put any tag on him, but I do think he struggles a little bit more than how open Geelong were with him. But that struggle is like what is that, like a low ton? Like, what is his floor? It's ridiculous. He takes most of their kick-ins. He gets so many 1-2s. He's involved in every switch or every play down the wing. It's mental.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember having a conversation with my brother-in-law, and I said, it's going to be really hard to resist transferring in Dacos after the first month when he's averaging 120, because none of those teams tag. And then, people will be trading him in, and we'll be going straight into a round 5 tag and a round 6 tag, most likely. And potentially even round 7, around 8 as well. Geez, okay, yeah, there's a lot. I remember looking at this earlier. Potentially round 9. There's a lot of potential tags in a row from that run onwards. And 1, I'm not resisting very well is the answer to my question to myself. And 2, I should have just started him if I thought he was going to score 120 for the first month.
Yeah. So that's a mistake.
Yeah, I like my. I don't know if you saw my tweet, JB. My pre-season deep backline had Hayden Young, Dacos, and Ed Richards as D1 to 3.
See that.
I'm like, damn it! All of those players did really well this week.
Yeah, I mean, I go back through screenshots, and before we saw a second of preseason, my favourite defensive structure was the two 500k guys.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I love Doherty. I think Doherty performed really well, and if he didn't have to go to the bench for a 10-minute period in the fourth, he would have scored 130. I firmly believe that.
So frustrating.
But 108 is fine. I'm very much okay with that pick, and yet the 500k guys did better, and they looked incredible. So Nick Dacos.
Yeah.
First of all, back to Tom Stewart just for a second. So you're happy with it saying that Sicily / Dacos are your best options? What if you could go to either?
Well, I mean, if you have one, I guess you could go to the other.
I know. Well,
I think
if you have one, go to the other.
Yeah,
but if you have
D1,
neither,
I think if you're looking the D1 route, I feel like Sicily's good. If it's a D2, then I wouldn't mind going with the Dacos route. If that makes sense.
I think the 100k we spoke about. Hopper
It depends
earlier.
what you do with 100 as well. Yeah.
The 100k, I'm going to go. This is what I'm going to circle back to. There are going to be trades that I think we want to make next week.
Yep.
If we're not making them this week, I think we're going to make them
We're
next
going to do
week.
it this week, JB. What are you talking about?
Well, it may be both. In my case, I think it's going to be both.
Like if you missed Gulden and you need the 100k to be able to get him, then sure.
100%. 100%. And not just that, but there are so many players that, and you might just want to go more guns and rookies. There's the potential that our structure just wasn't correct on how many mid prices we're starting.
I have too many mid prices, so
well,
I think
that you've unveiled one of the talking topics for later on.
Well, we've gone different structures, so you got to be careful how we talk about it. Those are very different.
Don't tell me what to be careful. Okay, so that's Tom Stewart.
Yeah.
Who we think Sicily or Dacos. I would prefer to go down and find that and have that money handy, but it is team dependent. And like you said, D1 Sicily I think is very, very, very handy as well, especially if he's a POD against anyone in and around your rank.
I mean, any concern for Sicily's role being there was some times around the middle.
A couple of CBAs.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, they like throwing him in there. I don't think
he's
that's
just
bad.
so good. He just scores.
Last year he played nearly a full game in the CBAs and he still scored 115 or something. Like, he's actually fine in there. The defense is bad without him in there, but he's fine in the CBAs. As long as he's not coming out of full forward. But they have good forwards.
Yep. I'm with you.
Developing forwards, yeah.
That's why I wanted Sicily in the first place.
Okay, and then Nick Dacos, urgency on trading him in, whether it be this week or next week. What do you think?
I mean,
even if you don't have like a Tom Stewart, just
I don't understand
urgency.
waiting on Dacos. That's the big thing.
Yep.
Because what are you, as I said, what are you waiting on seeing? He's going to score well this week. Just if you can, just get him this week so you get the big score. I feel the same way about Gulden. You know, like Gulden plays Hawthorn. What are you expecting by waiting another week to watch Gulden? I'll tell you what you're going to be waiting. You're going to be missing a 120 plus score.
All right, well, Gulden is on the list, so don't get too ahead of ourselves. The next one I want to talk about is Sheezel. Somehow 60% of the competition or more missed out on starting Sheezel. If you're one of those guys, which you nearly were, if you are one of those guys, he would have to be the easiest trade-in option this week.
So, yes, I just want to say I heard that Sheezel was going to be... I mean, they came out a couple hours before the game that he was likely going to be playing in the back line, which changes everything. Obviously, if he's going to play a full game in the back line, he's going to be a way better pick than playing as a small forward in the forward line. So a bit unlucky if, I guess, you missed the late news and you didn't have him.
I disagree.
You don't think that's unlucky?
No.
I mean, it is pretty unlucky.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, he played one quarter out of 8.
Yeah, I think he's a good pick regardless.
Out of 8 quarters, he played one quarter.
That should have been indication enough. Essentially, what he did was he played 2 good quarters forward, then got 0 touches in the third, and then moved him into defence to get him back into the game. And he scored 70-odd. 70-odd is fine.
But you're looking at preseason scores. They don't mean anything.
Yeah, they don't mean anything, but the role was perfect.
Yeah.
High half
two
forward.
like if you're playing half your game for North Melbourne in the forward line, that's tragic.
High half forward.
It's still tragic.
For North Melbourne is absolutely okay for someone with that ability, and then getting thrown into defence as a backup if you don't do anything for half a quarter is unbelievable.
I mean, that's
great.
I think
That's
it's fine.
perfect.
I don't think it's like a
Either he's kicking
for
goals
200K
or he's rebounding off half
like
back.
that good.
Regardless, if you miss Sheezel, then apologies, but I think you need to get him in this week.
Absolutely. I mean, they've already said he's going to be playing off the back again, so I'm going to be expecting another good score.
The next guy is definitely playing in defence. Jack Ziebell.
Yep.
Put out a pretty good score. Got the low ton for North Melbourne. I was really hot on him in the preseason. This is where my frustrations start growing with my own starting team.
You had him for a long time. A really long time. Long time. Weeks and weeks and weeks.
Tanner Bruin, I think the report came out from Geelong that Tanner Bruin was going to be playing midfield. That is the first time I got off of Jack Ziebell about 4 days before the season.
Yeah, I had Bruin most of that time, and you had Jay-Z, and I refused to put Jay-Z. I never had Jay-Z in my side the entire preseason.
So I don't think he's anywhere near essential to get in, especially not this week. I think the discussion is more so how sustainable is what he did playing against. So the way I phrase this, and this means no offense to either North or West Coast supporters, but they're going to have 16 tougher games this year, both those clubs. They both played each other, and I expect them both to be in that bottom part of the ladder.
I don't think anyone's being offended by you saying that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So I find it really hard to judge both Jay-Z and Tom Cole based on their good scores per expectations for this game.
Absolutely. And the number one thing I keep looking at for Jay-Z, he had 26 disposals.
Yep.
Do you know how many were contested?
Probably zero.
Literally zero.
Gosh.
He had zero contested
not
possessions,
good.
and that's fine because his role is to like mop up the cheapies. But when you're playing a high pressure side, I don't think that you're going to get away with getting 26 uncontested possessions. But two, like, how do you go when there's someone kind of putting pressure on you? Like, if you're going to turn it over. Do you know what his
disposal efficiency was?
Yeah, 96, I think, off the top of my head.
96%.
There we go.
Mad.
Yeah.
I think that game is repeatable. I think there's every chance he goes 100 for 50% of the games this year even. There's a chance of that.
I think he should. He's in that 95 to 100 range in the right role.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely.
So I think he's a good pick. If you've got him, I think you're very happy that you stuck with him. If you don't have him, I don't see him as a priority trade him. He's not going to be a keeper.
Well, I think if this is a hard part, I reckon he is the best. Sorry, that's not the right word. The safest person that's a mid-pricer to trade in this week, if you have to, because next week
he is.
I would look probably to see how Horne-Francis goes again and judge him, based on that. Whereas at least you know what you're going to get with Jay-Z. He's going to be playing in the back line. And probably just scoring okay every week. So I feel like that one is safer, but it's not going to I don't think it will make or break your season. I'd still consider him next week if he looks really well, to be honest with you, JB. It's just really hard in your forward line.
I don't hate it.
I think the top priority guys are the big five, I'll call them. Taranto, Rosie, Dunkley.
The thing
Cogs,
is, though, he's now
Gulden.
4 weeks away from getting defender status.
Yeah, that makes it a bit hard. But at the same time, the way that our structure is, it doesn't really matter if you play a forward in your midfield for a couple of weeks until round 6 comes along, and then you get that defensive status. So if I find myself next week with an extra trade and Hopper's scored poorly and Jay-Z's done well, I would certainly consider going him if the other mid-prices fall over.
Another talking point in this one was Will Phillips. Obviously, came on as the sub and scored 65.
He was so good.
TOG. We know he was going to be good. He was good. The early injury to Sherry opened it up for him. Sherry got injured, I think, in the first quarter or early second. He had 15% at TOG himself. Phillips, every chance to keep his spot in the side now. He should. They had Jaden Stevenson, Paul Curtis, Miller Bergman, Liam Shields. They had plenty worse players than Will Phillips after he came on. If he does hold his spot in this side, he actually becomes a pretty important trade in either this week or next.
I don't think
you'd probably say next. Yeah, you'd probably say next.
Probably next week. But, oh, man, he was the reason I ended up with Mackenzie on my bench because I upgraded Phillips to Setterfield and then got stuck with Phillips on the bench. So I got screwed over by Phillips being out, but I'm looking at potentially getting him next week if he starts and puts in the game. I guess I'd always be worried that he's going to start as a sub again, but he just showed why they shouldn't do that because he came on and I think he was
so good.
A real inspiration for that North Melbourne side. So, yeah, I would be surprised if he started the sub anytime soon. And I guess that's the thing with these subs. You never know what's going to happen in an early injury, and he's still put out a good score. It wouldn't have impacted his cash gen even if he, it's frustrating.
What if you started Ben Cunnington? 58 Supercoach, he had 16 touches, was predominantly in the forward line. That was his highest percentage time spent, was in the forward line or on the bench. Barely any CBAs. It is insane to me that Jai Simpkin was a forward/wing all preseason and Cunnington was the CBA midfielder and then they switched for round one. How has that happened? Can we trust anything in the preseason ever again? That is absolutely mental to me.
Well, it's the same with Sheezel.
If you have Ben Cunnington, how urgent of a trade out is he?
You're in a good position if you have Cunnington because he's more expensive than all those other mid-prices and you can use him to springboard to a better pick. If you don't have Gulden, you can just grab Cunnington to Gulden this week and that's totally fine. If you don't have Cogs, you might even be able to somehow squeeze your way to get Cunnington to Cogs and save yourself, I guess, before the prices change. Or even if there might be switcheroos and you can get Dacos. I mean, it's a great pick.
You probably can. There's a lot of switcheroos. And then we obviously spoke about Ziebell. I just actually want to touch back on Ziebell for a second.
He's not a good pick, I should say. Like Cunnington, when I say the price point is really attractive and you can do a lot with it, but I don't think...
But you need to get rid.
I mean, maybe you can give it one more week if it doesn't fit your team to do the trades. You're relying on a rookie next week and maybe you can give it one.
This week or next week, you'll probably be trading Cunnington.
Absolutely.
Back to Jay-Z for just a second. I just thought for a minute there. If Aaron Hall comes back into the side, which I think is actually a big if, where do you actually think he plays? Because I don't think it's in defence, but there's a chance.
Yeah, I think maybe Miller Bergman will be the first one out, and then his role might either be on the wing or it might be half back still. But
I think half forward. I don't think you get a lot from him at half forward.
Well, what's the point in playing him half back when you got Sheezel?
I think there's none. There's no point whatsoever. I think it's really detrimental to the team.
Yeah, I am in agreement with you. I mean, it might happen, but I just don't really see that impacting Jay-Z.
Yeah, I just wanted to get our opinions out on that because I'm sure a couple of people would have been saying, what about in the comments otherwise. Next is Tom Cole. He scored 78. Not a hugely popular pick, but maybe he should be. 160 odd K. I know some people are looking to get rid of Liam Jones this week. Hi, I'm one of them. And Tom Cole put out 20 touches, 78 Supercoach, which would both, if they were consistent over the season, would be career bests for him. Now, I again note that they played North Melbourne. I think it's super important and not to get trapped in by this. Do you think Tom Cole has any sustainable 60-plus scoring? Or a lot of people who did watch said, comparatively to his old self, where he was sort of the seventh guy in that defense, he now looks like the sort of fourth, fifth guy in that defense. Looks like they rely on him to exit sometimes. Looks like he wins a lot more of his one-on-one duels, which he might not have a couple of seasons ago. So natural progression and them just getting worse as a team seem to have benefited him a lot. So it wouldn't surprise me to see close to a breakout year from Tom Cole. But what that means scoring-wise, I think, is really, really hazy still.
Yeah, I don't think he's fourth. Looking at their back line, I think there's pretty clearly four more important players there. So it's definitely at best 5. I'd probably argue 6. But look, Cole had a really good game. I think this isn't one I would be willing to trade in early. I want to stress that. He had 90% disposal efficiency, 8 marks. He had a really good game. There's not many times where I think he's going to get 8 marks and 90% disposal efficiency, 7 contested. Like, this is really a really great game from him. I don't know if I'm going to see that again. I mean, with all of these rookies, the key part to remember is that the first game impacts the price cycle and the break even the least. So if you come out the next week and score 30, it kills you for way longer than a 30 in round 1. So for Liam Jones, for example, I know we're skipping ahead, but for me, it's not a priority trade if he misses or even if he doesn't miss, purely because the 5's going to go out of his price cycle quicker compared to...
You are getting ahead of yourself.
Yeah, well, I could see Cole scoring 30 next week, and I don't really feel comfortable saying, hey, go Jones to Cole, and then what happens? You bank 30K, and then you're stuck with another guy that's just scored 30. So, yeah, that's a wait for me on that trade, that Jones to Cole one. I would be giving that another week, unless you're desperate. You're 30K off Dacos or Gulden, and that's the only way to do it.
Yep. Campbell Chesser put out 20, 5 disposals, 3 marks, 2 tackles.
Didn't do enough, really, did he?
69% hog is actually promising, but he just did not do enough, did not get involved. The thing that keeps coming back to me is, and I know it's preseason, but he played really well against Port when they played. I think this wing role... I hope they understand that it's going to be super inconsistent and that he keeps getting repetition there. But there's a chance that they just go, well, look, mate, 5 disposals doesn't win you games, as in, like, doesn't win you positions in this team. So, go get some form in the waffle and then we'll bring you back, sort of thing. So that could go either way. So I don't want to deep dive on Campbell Chester, but I think it's worth pointing out.
I'm happy to give it another week, and if it's dropped or poor, then I'm also happy to trade.
Horn Francis is the next one. Super exciting debut for Port. Played the exact CBA midfield role that I said that he would not get this season, that he played in the preseason. No Travis Boak, but that just does not matter in my opinion.
Oh, wow, okay.
He had the CBA role with Boak in the preseason, and I still said no. Butters is going to get those CBAs when the season starts. He's just underdone and yada yada yada. He was incredible in there. He looked so good. He was our best on ground, and Boak coming in just does not change that. Boak was playing half forward anyway. Maybe like each midfielder loses 3% each and accommodates for Boak, but simply put, it's not going to make that big of a difference, if any at all. So I'm excited about Horn Francis, but I don't think he has keeper potential. So I don't really understand the pick unless you already have him.
So
because you're
what do you think
trading
he'll
in
average?
someone who you're going to be trading out. I think he has the capabilities now to average in the 90s, maybe.
Like low 90s, or it's different 99 to 91?
Yeah, no. So low 90s, sorry.
Yeah, okay. So
say like up to 95.
I agree. I watched the game as well and was blown away as everyone else was, looking at him and thinking, yeah, okay, that's prime Dangerfield right there. He looked beyond incredible, but his disposal efficiency was so high, which is not a trait that we've seen before. I mean, maybe a new start, fresh start, but we looked in that Pracky match. He had 21 touches, and I think it was 81 Dream Team to 70 SuperCoach because his disposal efficiency wasn't good. And he's just... I mean, he still shinned it. Like, I still saw some of his kicks come off his shin, but they just hit targets.
So I was at the game, and I remember about halfway through the second quarter, I was saying, it must have been halfway through the third quarter because the second quarter we didn't get a lot of the ball. Halfway through the third quarter, I turned to my wife and mother-in-law and said, like, this is not Horn Francis. This is not what we expect from him each week. He does not hit targets like this. And I think the very next 2 kicks were absolute helicopters, but still went to a Port player.
Yeah, they're literally
I was like,
helicopters.
that's what I expect, but I don't expect them to land in our lap every time. His disposal efficiency is still not good, and I think it was dressed up a lot this game just by the pure dominance, but I would be very, very surprised if that was a sustainable disposal efficiency for him. Very surprised.
Absolutely. But I'll give it another week as well. If he does the exact same thing 2 weeks in a row, it's going to be pretty hard to say, he can't do it. But it might be one of those rail flash in the pans ones. But it'll be a good test against Collingwood purely because the way our midfield worked against Geelong, we just dominated. Like it was fast and furious, and I want to see if he can keep up with it, really.
So if he tons up this week, do you put a level of importance on that potential trading?
It depends how he tons up, right? Like if he got 30 touches, I'd be more keen than if he got 20 with really good disposal efficiency.
Yep. Well, I mean, like we said, the disposal efficiency might have lifted. I would like to say, by the way, everyone's saying like 19-year-old, second year in the game, yada, yada, yada. Like Dacos was in that draft here. Like, and we know Dacos is a premium. And I know Dacos is better. Don't get me wrong.
Thank you.
And potentially in a better role. Better right now, I'll say.
No, better.
But let's not compare Port Horn-Francis to North Melbourne Horn-Francis. This is a brand new role and clearly a brand new attitude. I apologise, North fans. I know you're probably not enjoying.
They got Sheezel. They're not going to complain.
Exactly, they shouldn't. They shouldn't complain. They've got a great list. They've got a good coach. I loved their start to the season.
Horn-Francis is still the worst out of the three of them.
Maybe, but essentially, this is a different guy than what we saw last year. I don't think we can compare him to last year and say, he's going to start churning out 40s. Do you know what I mean? Not in this role. Not in this team like this.
There's too many CBAs to put out the 40s. I say that. He's probably going to put up 40 next week.
And Port, by all accounts, beating Brisbane by 50 points, looked like a better team than what North were last year. I think we can safely say that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair call.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to Connor McKenna. So if you started with that McKenna, which a lot of people, by the way, did. He did have he had the preseason game where he was sort of invisible, and then the next preseason game where he was invisible still but scored 60. And it was like, what is this guy going to produce for us this year? Like, he genuinely just might not be a great player. He might not average well enough. He's higher priced. There was a lot of defensive rookies, especially Wilmot being in his team. But 93 Supercoach, he actually does become a priority trade, and he looked very good in a big loss. It looks like he's going to make a lot of money for people who started him.
Yeah, I wasn't going to start him, so I got pretty lucky with Crozier being out. It was a weird price point to try and fit in the team, but yeah, it's worked out well for me. He was really, really good, and that looks like that's halfback role. He looks well ahead of Wilmot or any other real contenders outside of, it looks like there was that Rich, Coleman and McKenna kind of trio, and now Coleman failed the concussion test and is going to miss next week, at least, then we should see McKenna have a good week off the halfback, and I think Wilmot will probably be thrown off the halfback as well. So I'm looking forward to hopefully a good Wilmot score to kickstart his cash gen.
That's a very good point. His kick for goal, by the way.
Oh my God.
That is the straightest kick I've ever seen. It's just the pity he was running at the wrong side of the point post.
He missed from 2
I was
meters
right
out.
behind that one. I was right behind it. He literally kicked it like an arrow. It came off his boot and didn't deviate for a millimetre. But he was running at the wrong side of the post. And then I was going to say I was also behind the McKenna kick. I was on the wing, so I was behind both those sides.
It's not really behind, but yeah, okay.
Well, like sort of. Well, he was angled.
I mean, if your head's turned, it's behind. But.
I guess. But I was behind that one as well, and that did not deviate either. That was a 65-metre drop punt that went almost post high and was never missing from there. So he looked incredible.
I think there's some mayo on that kick, but I'll take it.
Maybe it's like a 75-metre set off one step.
It was off one step.
Ashcroft,
that was the only truthful part of the whole thing.
Ashcroft is the next guy. 55. He did kick a goal. Could there have been a harder debut for any player?
Yes, it could have. It could have been debuting for North Melbourne.
No, but North Melbourne won.
No,
they won.
Against Port Adelaide or whatever it is.
Sure. 50-point loss, high intensity game, very hot conditions. The role looks fine. I think there's no concerns with Ashcroft.
No. It's just unfortunate that he looked a bit lost early. I think he's going to end up being as with most rookies. He's going to flourish in the games where it's a little bit easier, not when the games they're getting destroyed by 10 goals. I think if Brisbane bounce back to, be up by 10 goals themselves, he's going to be, capitalising on that and, probably...
Yeah, he'll be a bit of a
I don't know if that's going to be happening this week against Melbourne, but I don't feel like he's... I know they've got a pretty tough draw. They got Bulldogs in round 3. It doesn't really get easier. Collingwood in round 4.
They could have the Port Adelaide start from 2022.
Their fixtures... Look, we've got to wait till round 5 for them to play North Melbourne, and that's the first time Ashcroft's going to kickstart his cash gen.
They might be Bulldogs.
Honestly, I'm still happy to keep him at this stage as, my M8 or whatever it is.
You have to keep him.
M7, M8. And
he still showed enough in a huge loss where so many of his teammates, he was still in the top 50 percentile in his team for SuperCoach. So, I mean, not a lot of them scored well, but he's
fine.
A rookie.
I think he'll make money, but it will just take longer than we thought. I think he's going to end up making it closer to his buy than, we probably expected him to.
Yeah. All right, so the next one's a big one. We're going to talk about Liam Jones, who scored 4 or 5, was it? In the
5.
end?
Thank you
got
very
one scaling,
much.
very nice. And was obviously subbed out with a neck injury, potentially playing this week. If I were to put any money on it, I would say that he's not going to play this week, but he's a chance to play this week. What are your thought processes on this one? He had 40% time on ground. This was not the first incident of the game where he already had...
It was nearly half time.
Nearly half time before this injury occurred. I know they play St Kilda this week, who just gave up like 400 points to the 3 Fremantle defenders, and that's not an exaggeration. It might have been more than 400.
It was.
So obviously they look primed to sort of score against, but this is like really, really levels of bad.
Yeah, I think it's a hold for 1 week until we get to see. And there's reasonings behind it. One, I think it's a pretty easy loop this week. You can loop Cowan into Wilmot, and I expect if Cowan doesn't score well, I think you can get a decent score out of Wilmot without Coleman. So I feel like that's a tough one to get, but you get more information. And secondly, I'm happy trading him next week so I can get more information on Body Uland as well as Cade Chandler, or using DPP, you can pretty much get any rookie that you missed. And I'd like to see one more week because, as I said earlier, the round 2 scores for rookies matter so much more than round 1. So it's more important that you get it right. And if you make your move this week, going down to a rookie, I don't know if you're not going to nail it. There are some asterisks. I think you can probably safely get Connor McKenna if you wanted to, if that was a miss, or if you're upgrading him to someone like Dacos. I think you can probably do that pretty safely. But outside of those things, I wouldn't touch him.
I'm okay with trading him. I'm doing it personally, but I think the circumstance in which you trade him is if, when I get to the end of this podcast and read out a list of players who might be looking to get in and out of our teams next week or this week, I think if that list goes higher than 5, then you're probably looking to make a trade or two that you don't desperately want to this week, but you think, if I don't and I save everything for next week, I'm not going to be able to do anything before price rises, or not be able to correct everything before price rises, which is arguably the most important week of SuperCoach trading, is getting in before those price changes. And the competition all of a sudden shifts on you. People have more money than you. People have less money than others. So I think that's super important. So if it gets to the end of this podcast and I read out 4 or 5 names that you're going to be interested in, I think the reasoning for trading him goes up significantly. Otherwise, if you're a little bit more comfortable, there's plenty of people's teams who have sent me, plenty of people who have sent me their teams and said, "Look, I got Liam Jones. I'm super happy to get him out this week." And I look at it and go, "You've got Gulden. You're not far from Dacos if you need him, and most of your rookies, if not all of your rookies, are okay. I'd absolutely hold him in those cases." I'm talking the more extreme cases of messed up teams, which mine falls under. I think those guys are looking to move him on this week.
Yeah, we basically said the same thing.
Cool, I'm glad. I wasted everyone's time. All right, so the next one is Sam Flanders for Gold Coast.
Stupid, sexy Flanders.
Yeah, stupid indeed. So similar to the preseason, they got flogged and they didn't score a lot. And unlike the preseason, he didn't get 30 touches. He got less than 30 touches. By quite a bit actually.
Yeah.
Got 19 touches.
Kicked some goals.
But he kicked 2 goals and still just scored 64. And now I don't think he's a goal kicker.
No.
So the fact that he got 2 goals and only 64 in this are super concerning to me. If I was a Sam Flanders owner, I think I'd be tucking my tail between my legs and potentially looking to move this one on.
Absolutely. The role's not good, and it was slightly different than the previous week. May have just been because they were getting absolutely demolished in that midfield by the Swannies. He wasn't pushing up the same way that he was in the practice matches. I think that was a tough sell. The role's not there, and I don't think anyone with that role is going to be able to produce really good Supercoach points. So you're probably looking at, if you missed a Sheezel or something, a really easy out that you could do this week. Otherwise, I'd be getting ready to look at how I'm going to get, if I'm going to downgrade or upgrade him, at the end of next week. There's just no way he's going to survive past next week.
No. He can't survive in your teams. There's a chance. I mean, he kicked 2 goals. I would say with another performance like this, there's a chance he's, again, already looking at a green vest. But there's, if he's putting goals on the board,
he's not
I wouldn't think he's that bad.
Vest. I mean, I'd still expect another 60s.
He could in 4 or 5 weeks.
In 4 or 5, yeah. Just in terms of tomorrow. Next week. Yeah. In the very next week. I think you're probably getting a 60 out of him and you just cop it for 1 week to get more information. It's better than burning a trade on the wrong person.
I do agree. Unless, of course, I read a few too many names at the end of this podcast and you think,
definitely
I need to move a couple of people on.
Don't do it to Chandler. Because I feel like
we'll
what
talk
people
about that.
will be asking us. So I'm just going to rule that one out early.
Yep. All right. So Uland, Constable and King all played in this game.
Yes.
I'd like to get your thoughts on all 3 of them. Very varying results by these 3. Very concerning for at least 2 of them. So do you want to just... I know you watched this one closely, so just flick out what you got.
Basically, King did what you would expect a key forward to do in a side that's going to get demolished, that has good defenders. The kicking... The Gold Coast midfield were under a lot of pressure. Their kicks inside 50 to King were not good. He's a key forward with a really, really low floor. It's not a great role for Supercoach as key forwards. The role never has been. You kind of need him to be kicking back-to-back weeks of 5 goals for him to make you 100K and then cash out immediately before he loses all the money. I think he's still got potential to do that, but if a rookie is able to put in better, back-to-back high scores like Chandler or Philippou or someone like that, it might be worth the trade, depending on how King goes next week. But I think it's the same sort of camp as Flanders. Just don't... I hope he's not on... I don't think he's on anyone's field, JB. I'm pretty sure he's on most people's benches. So you could probably just pop him on the bench again and reassess that one next week. I think Constable and Uland's I'll talk about in the same breath. Uland was better than Constable. He was playing more of a... defensive wing role, went all the way down to the back pocket and then kind of up the wing. Uland did not stop trying until he just stopped until the final whistle went. He was great. I thought his efforts were really good. His decision-making was good. He was in the right places and he's going to hopefully get the opportunity to improve in that side. And on the other hand, I saw Constable's stats looked really good on paper. That 87 Dream Team looks real nice, but he was terrible. He was just a turnover merchant. He could not kick. And
so bad in terms of turnovers. 23 kicks and just 46% disposal efficiency is crazy.
And there was kick-ins too.
Yeah.
And he still wasn't hitting targets. It was just a really, really poor display. And I think they said Weller is available for this week. So I don't know who is going to get dropped. My gut feeling is it's going to be Constable, but it might be Ulan might get dropped. But that would be tough because he was real good. I was looking at him during the game thinking, oh, I'm going to downgrade Liam Jones to him in 2 weeks' time. That's how confident I felt in the moment. But it's really hard with Gold Coast because they do have those outs on that halfback line, and Brandon Ellis is not far away, and he was playing kind of on the wings, and I think we just need to see how.
Lachie Weller is confirmed to return this week.
Yeah, so we need to see who stays in, who stays out. But for sure, I have question marks over both those guys. But if Ulan can put in another really good performance, I would potentially look there next week. I do have. Let's just say I'm pushing Constable. I'm making plans already in my next week and this week's trades that ends with Constable on the bench if I need him to be, because I don't want to be left with a donut.
I think all three of them are obviously wait and sees for next week.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's the potential you're sideways in Constable, but probably only King is looking at a trade out option.
Yeah.
Whereas Uland looking at a potential trade in option.
A Constable could come in and out the whole year, so probably it's not like a desperate trade. At the end of the day, if you have like him and Chesser, you're always going to be trading. If Chesser puts in another 20, probably looking at that.
Okay. We got a few more players to go through here. Errol Gulden is the next one. This actually, I've got this marked down as a lengthy discussion, but I don't think it actually needs to be.
No.
The only thing that I will say is he got the 50% CBAs, which we expected him to get anyway.
Expected 50.
I expected 40 to 50 between there. Yeah.
I thought 40 would be a good.
So
good
it was a slight uptick, but someone like Callum Mills had a down tick, who's still obviously coming back from. He had some fitness concerns this preseason. He was rested for a couple of those games. So I expect Mills to slowly go up and Errol's to slowly go back towards 40, but I don't see it dipping below 40 anyway, so it doesn't really matter. His role was good. It's going to be good. He had 24 touches, 5 tackles and a goal. I would just like to see what he does in a game that isn't decided by 50 points Son's way. I don't know if we'll get that opportunity. I don't know actually who they verse next week.
Hawthorn.
Who they play? It is actually Hawthorn.
At the SCG.
Okay, that's a bit concerning for non-owners, but so we're not going to see that before the price changes. Essentially,
could get the Finn tag.
He
could get the Finn McGuinness tag.
He genuinely could actually. That is very true. He actually could be their most taggable
Probably
player.
Warner, but you never know. Stranger things have happened.
I actually don't know. Well, Warner had 30 and 8 tackles. He was pretty good.
I think he had 3 binds as well. He could have had a monster game.
He did. Regardless, anyway, I think we can safely say Gulden passed the first test of the season, which was getting through an actual non-practice match, full-on AFL match in the midfield and getting that high score, which he did. So I think at this point, the 13 contested possessions is the one that stands out to me, and only went at 54% disposal efficiency for that 115, so could have gone monstrous.
That's the scary part.
Yeah, I think he is just an uber premium, and he slots into that big 5 that we now have forming.
So the only concern I had at all was that calf strapping that appeared in the 3/4 time break. But then he just played like every CBA in the last quarter. And I'm like, well, how much can I really be stressed about it if they just strapped it and then threw him in the midfield for the rest of the whole game? He was insanely good. It kind of felt like the Swans would attack. Like they go rebound from their defensive 50. They get to the... I don't know if I'm using descriptive words very well, but not quite in the forward 50, but like around the forward 50. But then they would like sideways or diagonally kick it to Gulden and let Gulden have that inside 50 kick because he's better at it. It looked like it was a set play almost. I mean, he had 10 inside 50s from 18 kicks.
He had the second most meters gained in the entire team.
But that 10 inside 50s from 18 kicks, it just really felt like that was a game plan. They're like, let's get it into the guy who's got the best kicking, inside 50 disposal efficiency, and let's just utilize him. And I don't know if that's right or wrong. I guess we'll find out more. But from eye test, that's kind of what I saw watching it. And he is really good. I thought at 40% CBAs, which was the most I thought that he would get, he could go 100 or would go 100. And now he's at 50% CBAs. So what's that? That's probably 105, which makes him very good value at 470k, and if he's increasing his floor, now and next week might be the cheapest to get him. But JB, I want to also mention, I've seen a couple of questions already, basically, or not questions, but comments that I want to address, which just says, if Gulden's good again next week, then I'll get him. He's not going to score badly against Hawthorn. It's really silly to me. I mean, he's obvious, unless he gets the fin tag, he's going to just score really well. So what are you waiting for? Just get him now then, if that's what you're deciding on. I'd rather have the big score in my game than not have the big score.
Well, I'm not getting him because I need Dacos.
Yeah, sure.
So there are reasons.
But if you have Dacos,
then if you're just sitting on your hands.
For?
Look, we're going to have a discussion about this a bit later, but the aggressiveness needs to be talked about. There are 36 trades in the game this year.
There's not many players I'm aggressive about as Gulden and Dacos.
You really need to assess, premiums that are... What did we buy last year? Was it last year or the year before? Stephen May at 500k, and we were gassed with that. It was like, it's Stephen May is going to average 90 pluses. Was he?
Yeah.
I thought it was like
400.
No,
it was 400.
I thought it was closer to 500.
No, it was 400. I remember because I didn't get him.
Okay, well then that is pretty cheap. But regardless, for only 100k, we're getting two guys that are in the game right now that are looking like being not just 90 plus, but 100 plus quite comfortably, and uber premiums. They're not going to be cheaper. There's no time to just sit on your hands and say, I might just get them in round 8 when they're 580k. Or,
I do think Dacos in the back-to-back tags can get back down to 500k.
I'd be very surprised if he got back down to 500k.
Fair enough.
I'd be very surprised if he got back to back tags as well.
Well, I mean, the run has all the taggers. I mean, might not be 4, but even 2
it just
gets him down there.
Doesn't happen like that. I just don't think that's realistic to go with. Is that he's just going to get 6 tags in a row?
Well, I think he's playing the 4 tagging teams in a row.
Yeah, but the game doesn't necessarily work like that. Like we've had Perryman, who just played against the Crows, got injured in the first 2 seconds.
It's true.
Like,
it's very true.
Things do happen, and I think that is a big thing of what we need to talk about later. Is we overrate the tag and the potential of a tag, and sort of underrate the scores that come in between, or the scores that come in the tag games that just don't end up in being tag games.
Well, it ends up not tagging the player you expect. Like Sarong got tagged instead of Brayshaw.
Yeah,
which we never expected. So you wouldn't.
Yeah,
people are like,
never
can't get Brayshaw because he's getting tagged round 1, and then he ended up not getting tagged round 1. Ended up, I know I'm jumping ahead, sorry, but yeah, ended up with this massive 114 Dream Team game, but then still scores like 60 because he can't kick.
Don't worry, you're not jumping ahead. He's not on my list to talk about.
Great.
So the next guy I do have to talk about, though, we're going to go into the GWS Adelaide game, which is full of people to talk about. There's 4, 3 of them with stars next to them.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's get through. We don't have to rush, but let's get through with a bit of pace here. So firstly, Callaghan. Only had the 1 CBA, so I don't want to say that his role improved after the injuries, but it definitely that they lost players who get a lot of the ball, and he found himself just off the back of stoppages getting a lot of the ball. What I did find interesting, and that I didn't really quite see in the practice games, is he was still relying on the ball falling into his lap a bit, which is with a wing role you can kind of expect. But I did see him get sought out a lot when kicking from the wing towards the half forward.
Yep.
I think he's got a left boot that they really, really trust, and it's very penetrating. I think they like getting in his hands on the sort of spread. So I saw that, which I did not see in the preseason games. If I saw more of that in the preseason games, I would have been more sold on this winger, because now it becomes a winger who they actually do try to feed the ball, which I think is super important. He's always up at those stoppages around the ground, and although he's not getting CBAs, I think the role that he had against Adelaide was much, much, much better than the role that he had in the practice match.
So it was interesting because Ware was on the other wing, and when there was the option of going towards Ware or Callaghan, they pretty much always chose to go to Callaghan. I don't know if that was on purpose, but that's just the...
Well, Ware's a more defensive sort of winger.
Yeah, but they, when they're at the top
offensive
50 and they're like, am I going to go left or am I going to go right? They just always went to the Callaghan
I would
side.
choose Callaghan as well. Yeah.
But, I mean, to be fair, I think he had like a 40 Supercoach last quarter to get up to the ton. He just had these long spurts of not getting the ball. I mean, it took him 10 minutes to get his first touch, and then coming on from the quarter two, before half time, I think it was like 20 minutes until he got his next touch. Like there's just these like long spurts where he doesn't get it. And then he was like super involved in the last quarter when the game was on the line and got a lot of points. But at the end of the day, I think it was Frico that tweeted out that he had the highest kicking efficiency of anyone in the whole round. And you look at his stat line, 25 possessions and 0 tackles, and you think, well, there's still upside in that pick, especially now that Jelly's concussed and out for at least 1 week. Then he's just going to have a potentially, I guess, a more settled role.
Well, not just that, but Perriman's got to be out with a couple of weeks with a hamstring injury.
He's not going to be thrown around, right? It's just going to be the same consistent role for the next couple of weeks when they have an easy fixture. And for me, if he puts out, another ton, where that's cash in the bank. He's going to be making money.
To get 25 touches from a wing,
that's pretty good.
No scoring at all. Just the one playing at 84% efficiency, but 84% time on ground, which shocks me because like he's not played before. Like I know he has played before, but he's so fresh and he's getting 84% tog on a wing.
He's good.
Is very, very, very good. It's very good. So I think he's on my list of potential trade-ins as well for next week. If he goes a ton again, which I do think we want to watch him next week. I know they've got West Coast, but they do have an easy run for the first 6. Or first 5, I think. Or maybe we can throw 6
I'm looking at getting him this week,
Brisbane.
to be fair. It's part of my whole getting Dacos plan.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's absolute. I think that's absolutely okay as well. Okay, I'm glad that we did that. So he's on the in list as well. So the next guy to talk about is Josh Kelly. Now, we are going to have differing opinions on this, so I want you to justify why you think he's a potential trade out this week.
Sure. Firstly, from what I saw, given I watched the game, Josh Kelly was phenomenal. It was unfortunate that his first couple of kicks, which, I don't know, I saw he get the clearance and then kick it long to a somewhat of a pack, but then there was a bit of wrestling and then a third person came over the top and took the mark and then they gave Kelly a clanger. And I was like, okay. And I think that happened 3 times.
His forwards did not contest
they didn't
the ball
that was the problem.
As much as they should have.
That was a problem because they kept getting in these like wrestling matches and then like Dawson or someone would come over the top and take the mark. And then Kelly got 3 or 4 registered clangers in the first quarter. So his score just never really picked up from that point onwards. And he looked really good otherwise. Like he was around the ball kind of in the role that we expected. He got a tiny bit more pushed out when Perryman went out just purely because Ward can't play on the wing well. So Ward got more inside mid-time and Jelly started a couple of CBAs on the wing but then kind of ran in. I think he's going to be a good pick. My one issue for me is that, for a lot of people, is that 1, you might not have bench cover this week or good enough bench cover this week. And 2, if you're like me where your structure has Jones at D2 and potentially Jones missing, I'm just taking advantage of Kelly being out and being able to restructure appropriately, specifically because of some failed mid-price picks, I'm able to split Jelly into Dacos and Gulden, and that seems really good. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. It's just kind of the perfect timing and how things worked out. However, if you ironically are like me and your structure is fine and you have Mackenzie on the bench, I don't know how many people have Mackenzie on the bench. Surely not many, but I could hold him technically and be fine. I just wouldn't. My structure would be terrible moving forward. I think if you can hold him, if it's a 1 weeker, which we can't guarantee that it is, looks like he's going to be a good pick for the rest of the season at least.
That's why I don't understand. It's going to be a 1 week injury.
Is it?
Yeah, because So there was an interview with one of the coaches who said that the 12 days expires the day before the game week after next.
But you don't know how he's going to pull up, like if he's going to have headaches in 3 days later.
If we want to play the maybes and that. I mean, we generally keep premiums for 2 weeks anyway. Especially if you've got good cover.
It's true, but I don't think people have cover. So that.
Oh, you do?
I do, but not many people would accidentally have Mackenzie on the bench.
Okay, but even still, I think there's enough switcheroos that maybe there's a Philippou on the bench or another player that is... Why does that sound bad?
Philippou could definitely score like 20 this week.
I mean,
they won last week.
And the guy that you trade in could go 20. It's easy to just say that players could score this, that, or the other, but I think essentially you've got a premium who's out likely for just 1 week.
Well, I guess it depends who you're trading to. I'm not saying trade to an LDU.
I'm just curious why we're breaking the 1 week trade rule.
Because I think structure is more important than individual premiums.
So you can't fix your structure over 2 weeks the same way while keeping Josh Kelly?
No, I can't. As I need to, because I have one too many. Because I have one too many. I have 3 300k guys in my midfield and 4 premiums.
Yep. That sounds like 3 trades of but
no, it's in like that's the way. Because I mean I didn't get all 3 wrong. Like I've Setterfield, like that's fine to hold. So just the way that my team has shaped out is it's better to get rid of Kelly to split into Gulden and Dacos. And I'm sure there's other people that need that extra backline frailties fixed up, especially if Constable's dropped this week.
All I'll say is, I know it's going to be team dependent.
Massively.
But I think it's optimal to hold Josh Kelly. I think that is the best play for Supercoach for Classic. Is just to hold Josh Kelly for a week. It's a 1 week injury we're talking about. He was going to score 120 before he went down. I genuinely have no doubts about that. He was one of the best 3 players on the ground, which the other 2 were the other 2 midfield people that he had. But
I agree with that. Overall sentiment. I just think
I think that's fine then.
If you've got your 2 defenders, then you're probably fine to just hold Kelly.
All right, Lachie Ash, not owned by a lot of teams, but we'll just quickly spit out what we think of Lachie Ash. 21 disposals, 1 mark, 1 tackle, a free 4, 2 against. 2 of those 21 disposals were very circumstantial, as he stood near the guy kicking it out of bounds in the full 2 times in a row.
Back-to-back kicks, yeah.
Yep. With that, he had 6 clangers, 76% disposal efficiency, and stayed true to his surname as each of his teammates burnt him at every possible opportunity when he was free. Now, it tells me 2 things. Firstly, I don't think 55 is what he's going to average for the season. I think there are games where he's going to get on the end of it and score a lot more. I think there are games where they're going to use him, maybe even next game when Whitfield's not there.
Yeah, well, they have to.
However, it tells me that he's not in their priority to get the ball to, which I definitely thought he would be, judged by the preseason game. He's not even their second priority to get the ball to. There was a time when Cornelia had the ball in the middle of the ground. He looked left, saw Ash running through the middle of the ground by himself, which, by the way, as a footballer, you want to get the ball through the middle of the ground at all costs. Instead, he turned to his right, saw that there were like 8 players there, opposition end teammates, and like almost still tried to handball that way. And then as he's getting tackles, like quickly flicks it out to the left. He's like, oh my God, I better give it to Ash here because I've got no other options. He was so underused.
And then Ash got tackled immediately, and I think it was an ineffective handball.
Yeah, it was something, but he's just so inefficiently used, and 90% time and ground. I don't see why that suddenly changes. I mean, Whitfield misses 1 week. Sure, he might have a better week this week, but why is the mentality going to change around Ash? He had 2 kickouts, neither of which he left the square for.
That was so
which
sad.
Is very upsetting. But I don't know what needs to happen for him to now go up and average. He's not going to average 90 plus like people who chose him thought he was going to.
Oh, I mean, I was expecting him to have a great year, but the problem was I also thought that the Orange Tsunami, sorry for saying it, I know it's a trigger warning for most people after watching that game and them saying it 70 million times. I thought that was actually going to be a thing, and it was not a thing. They looked terrible. And then they fought their way back into it, but it was not on the back of any sort of...
It was the midfield.
Yeah, it was not on the back of any sort of tsunami that I was promised.
Nah.
Realistically, in the practice match, it was all coming off the halfback. It was all rebounding and all running through it. That's not how they won that game. It was just through the midfield being really good.
And it's not like Crows looked particularly interested in stopping this fake tsunami, but essentially they both just played their games, and that's just not GWS's game.
It was very frustrating. That being said, with Whitfield out, I think you can probably safely hold him for 1 more week. That's a bit of luck, positive luck, I guess. But at the same time, given you know you're going to be moving him on next week, you may as well do it this week if it gets you Dacos or Gulden or whoever.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing is that it's probably going to get you one of those guys. His price point is up there and he provides a lot of flexibility on the trade table. Very much okay with moving him on. Okay with people holding as well. He did get 21 touches, but let me be clear. He got 35 of these points in the third quarter.
It's a big quarter,
35-point third quarter he had. Outside of that, he had 20 points for the match in the other three quarters. And not on the bench, not on, the ball was stuck on the other side. He had 90% time on the ground. He was there. He could not score Supercoach points if he got paid to.
Yep.
Which he does. Now, next team, there are still players to talk about here. Luke Pedler scored 83 with a goal. I think it's important.
Well, I'm not going to talk about Cogs. All I'm going to say
but
is thank you for being so stern on Cogs the whole preseason, because I probably wouldn't have held on to him for the whole preseason if I didn't have your voice in the back of my head telling me that I have to pick Cogs because he looks really, really good. So thank you for that.
Yeah, best on ground performance by Cogs, 143 Supercoach. If you didn't start him, I think you're right. I should have spoken about him because he's probably one of the most important players to get into your team before a price rise, because he's not coming down until round 8, 9 or 10 after their tough run. Sort of probably gets a couple of average scores out of him.
How do you get to him though?
It's really difficult.
Through Jelly?
You're probably... I mean, look, if I had Jelly and no Cogs, I would absolutely make that change.
Wow, okay.
I know it's just 1 week, but Canelio being a forward compared to Jelly being a midfielder, and I said this all preseason, I would make that change. That differential right there, I think is going to earn you so many more points during the season, let alone just this 1 week.
But what if you have good bench cover?
Coming up against West Coast, we'll switch him to the forward line, switch him with Davey or something. Coming up against West Coast, he's actually captainable with his teammate Tom Green. So, I do think that is important to get Canelio in.
All right.
However, the next guy was Pedler.
Yep.
I just wanted to briefly touch on him, very briefly. Scored 83, 13 touches. We just need to see what he does in a more one-sided game, I guess.
Still not good.
This was... Yeah, he was still playing forward pocket. He was very crafty, very good, but I'd like to just see him again. I don't think anyone's trading him in this week. I wouldn't be confident trading him in this week.
I wouldn't be surprised if this was in his best 3 games for the whole season.
Neither. Okay, so we've got Laird to talk about now.
Great.
God, there's still so many people to talk about. We're an hour and 20 minutes in. There's still... Let me count.
No, I don't know what the run sheet is. I've gone into this blind. My phone died like 5 minutes ago, so I can't even check any stats.
There's 6 players to talk about still. By the way, you're on a laptop. You can probably check the stats.
I don't like the clicking noise in the background. But if you do hear it, it's all just JB anyway.
Shout out to Wushka, because I know he hears it and I know he'll say something to me. He would have sent me a message prior to this point.
I leave mine. Be like, I can't see
vindication.
Anything on my screen. Just nothing. So I'm usually on my phone, but my phone died. Can I just say something about the day that's important context for the whole game?
Go for it.
It was crazy weather. Like I live in Sydney. It was so hot, but also incredibly humid. Like, those, I don't know if people have been to Thailand, but if you've been to Thailand, you're walking through and it's like
I've been to
muggy.
Bali.
Yeah, same thing. It's that temperature where it's like humidity, where it's like walking through water, but it's daytime. It was like that, but 37 degrees in blazing hot sun. It was just really wild weather, and I'm not massively surprised that it threw out just strange results for that midfield battle. Like for GWS players who train, I think that weather happens like once a month in Sydney, right? So they're kind of used to it. But the Crows players would have had no idea what was going on. Like that would have been really hard. I'm not super surprised that Laird and like Berry were struggling early, because if you're not used to it, that's not easy.
I actually think the Laird discussion is going to be short. So he had 77% time on ground, which is slightly lower. He had lower CBAs because I think the time on ground was a bit lower, probably because of the conditions. He still had a 30-point first quarter, which included 2 behinds, so he
Could have
nearly
had 50.
threatened to have a 50-point first quarter, and then scored about 20 points from then. I don't think he was tagged, but I think he was very well held by the team, and when the ball did look to bounce his way, there were 2 guys all over him, and that's just something I've personally noticed. So if someone really watches the game and sees anything other than that, then I'm happy to receive feedback on that. But that's sort of, I mostly looked for it in the fourth quarter when I was like, really, what is actually happening with this guy? And you just saw the ball bounce out. He's already getting held back or tackled pretty much. And then Barry would just swoop on it, or they still lost the clearance, but as long as it didn't go to Laird. Not to mention, this might have been the lowest tackling game in the history of the sport in the midfield. A lot of the tackling was outside the midfield, like strangely in the forward and defensive 50. Barely any in the midfield, did not suit Laird at all. He only had 2 for the game, which really hurts him. But the 18 touches, I just think it's just one of those games where, like, we're going to look back at it and say, oh my God, remember when we all captained that Laird 50 and then he averaged 140 for the rest of the season? Like, I really see something like that happen, not 140, but I think he still ticks every single box that we want. I don't think he's a trade out option. I think that's crazy to think. He's still my vice captain this week coming against Richmond, because they won't do anything like what GWS did. And it's at Adelaide Oval in better weather. And I don't see a huge issue. But it was concerning. And I think if he does do it again this week with far less excuses behind him, then he becomes like a really desperate trade out. But as you said with the price changes earlier in the podcast, if he's ever going to have a bad week and then back it up with 2 good weeks, it's going to be this week. And no one is affording him in round 3. Let's be honest, round 3 or 4, when he bottoms out at like 660, if he has a couple of good weeks now. So I think of all the rounds for him to have a bad score, this was the best one. But it doesn't make it hurt any less.
Yeah, the way what I saw was, like, I think the main thing, and I don't know, again, it could have just been this one matchup and it may have just been a terrible matchup, was he was kind of forward. I don't know how to describe it. He was like kind of forward. In the centre bounce, you have 3 guys. You got the ruckman, you got your 3 guys. You got one person kind of at the back, one person kind of at the side, and one person like in the front. I think the front person is, unless you got a dominant ruckman, the front person's the least likely to be involved. The person at the back is more likely because, one, if you don't know where to go, you're either going to be handballing it forwards or you're going to handballing it back and hope, or there's kind of that freedom of that back person to like run around one of the other 2 guys and get the little hands off. Laird did that heaps last year, which is really good. I don't know how this midfield mix worked, but it looked like Laird was like the front person for a lot of the stoppages, which is not the ideal one, because you don't get any of those little cheapy handballs. And I can't imagine that it may have just been matchup dependent and it just didn't kind of work out in that favour. But I'll be looking very closely at that against Richmond and seeing where his position is in those CBAs, and if their midfield mix forces him to not be the guy to get the cheapies anymore, because that will be that'd be massive. Like I would be willing to trade Laird if he puts out a terrible score next week.
Yeah, he's not a trade out option.
Not this week. I got to watch him again. If he puts out, honestly, he's still my VC next week, right? Like he might put out a 150.
Yeah, same. Yeah, exact same. And like we said, he was nearly on a 50-point first quarter. Definitely one to watch. I think we just watch. We see. Don't do anything crazy. If you trade him out and he has back-to-back good weeks and he's now owned by the competition less yourself, I think that is entering like borderline delete team status, unless you like nail your 2 guys who you're probably trading into.
People have been suggesting crazy trades to me where they're trading in, let's say, day cost, but then also a mid-pricer. And I just... No. I think it's so hard to get those top-tier guys that you chose one to have as your captain for the whole season. And unless, I think it would be... Like that, the whole point of them was so that you would captain them and have that safety, and knowing how difficult it would be to get somebody with a massively high floor throughout the year. If I am trading him out, I'll do early call JB, because who's going to hold me to my word? But I think I would just do it to Oliver if that was the way I went about it. Like I wouldn't even bother trying to get creative and bringing in another mid-price. I don't feel like I'm going to get great value out of that, especially if the mid-price is like Horn Francis. That's who's not even a guaranteed keeper.
All right, the next couple of players that we got to talk about, there's 4 guys who I want to quickly breeze through, and then one more guy who I want to deep dive into. So the first one was just mentioning Warple.
I thought you were going to say Rochelle.
No.
He was real good.
97's
really good. If he's on your waiver
and
you draft,
and he is real good.
Pick him up
100%. And if he
does it again next week, he might be a Flanders
if someone
out.
underrates him as a keeper league, that's what I mean. Next round we'll talk about him, but for now we're just taking it as it is. Sure. So James Warple, 29 disposals. He looks very good, but against Essendon, who's one of the weaker midfielders in terms of limiting opposition Supercoach players. I would say is probably one of his best chances at a high score, 29 touches. I don't think this is anything to screw your team up about. I think we still watch Warple next week if we don't have him against the Swans, and we don't rush him into our sides. I don't think he's probably... I think likely you're happy if you started him, but you're not getting him if you didn't start him. I think you're still happy to not own him.
If he goes 95 next week, I'd look potentially there. But
there's a chance where you can side swap someone like Hopper if that money means something to you. Right. But like that's the scenario that we're looking at.
Agreed.
So don't do anything crazy with Warple. As with Setterfield, I think it's important that they verse the Hawks. And he scored really well in the midfield, 99 Supercoach, which is ridiculously lower than his dream team, which surprises me.
Well, he wasn't that good. Like, he was fine. I mean, maybe he was overrated because of his dream team and, his stats count. But watching the game, like, he was very uncontested. He got in chains, which is where he got a lot of the ball. But his actual midfield CBA work was not that good. And Zerrett was being tagged, so they were, like, kind of using him sparingly in that midfield. So I was happy that I had him in my team and I'm happy enough with him, but I'm definitely not, I'm not like saying, oh, this is a thrill, you must get him. Like, let's look at him next week and reassess.
I think he's the exact same as Warple.
And more expensive.
Pricey.
Let's have a look.
And then the other 2 guys are the Saints boys, Philippou, who obviously played well. I think he's owned by a lot of teams anyway, but he's also a wait and see. So this is obviously jumping into
I just want to see what happens when they get smashed.
Well, they didn't in this game. They won by 15 against Fremantle. The thing I think is his role was incredible. He could have actually scored better because he had a couple more roundabout shots on goal or a couple of like unselfish passes, which is why he got such a good Supercoach ratio.
Wait, when you say incredible, what do you mean his role is incredible?
Did I say his role was incredible?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I don't know if I did, but if I did, I actually do like his role. I like his half-forward role, and I like how involved he is in the forward 50. But I don't know if I said that.
I just don't think Saints are very good. I know they just beat Freo, but...
I was going to say, Ross Lyon... I think Ross Lyon is the right guy for this club, and I don't know if they're going to get smashed. They held Fremantle to 52. You already see the defensive mindset that he's installing. And they didn't have an outstanding player. None of their guys dominated this game. Mason Wood was the highest Supercoach score with 108. They only had 2 tons.
And he scored those goals in the last. Looks pretty good.
Yeah, it was a very, very stretched out team effort, which I think is very Ross Lyon. I will touch on Royal Marshall. I don't even have him on my list, but it's very hard to score against Sean Darcy. Yep. I think 80 is fine, no concerns. And then lastly, Liam Stocker, 74, 20 touches, 9 marks. Very involved to get across halfback and really built into the game as well. I think role. I love his role. And you look at Caulfield, who's his direct competition, who's at least 4 to 5 weeks away and probably a small stint in the VFL, considering he's been out for 18 months now. I think Stocker's quite safe, and I think Ross has clearly identified him as someone who can safely be in that role. He uses the footy well. He was very mature with the footy, I think is the best way to explain it. Didn't just whack it on the boot, didn't fall under the pressure or anything. 85% disposal efficiency. I think he's a very good sideways if you do need to get... I mean, he doesn't really get much money from someone like Liam Jones, but if you have someone else around there, if you go Lachie Ash via Jinby and Stocker's the guy that you want, then I completely understand that too.
Yeah, I think you're paying for the job security in this one. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's got, a mid-40 score in him at some stage, but he looks like he could pepper the 60 mark. It's not like amazing value where you have to get him. It's just that job security.
But not least, Nat Fyfe scored 26 Supercoach. Now, very, very frowned upon selection in our circle, but still very highly owned in the general community. I think it's so important to say, firstly, I don't think Nat Fyfe is going to have a game this bad ever again. He was just, this was not his game. 3 frees against, didn't get on the scoreboard with any goals. Disposal efficiency was bad, 6 clangers. That was so un-Fyfe-like. It was crazy. However, having said all that, he's also not going to average 90 or even probably 85 plus. So I think he's a trade out for sure.
Yeah. It's got North Melbourne
in the next week or two.
So week,
so maybe assess North Melbourne, get the 80 score that he gets against North Melbourne.
And then
just remember, the reason that we didn't like him, as in you and I, and we then spread that word a little bit more. He scored 90 with 3 goals and 8 score assists in the game against Port in the Pracky. So I just, it was less than 8, but it was close.
It wasn't quite 8, but you're right. It's the role is not good, and that's what we care about. So make of that what you will. But there's bailout options available. Some of these mid prices might be good, but he's not far in price from Gulden. If you got the cash, that one, never a better 160k spent than upgrading 5 to Gulden.
Okay, so I've got.
What about Jack Steele? He scored 90, 28 touches, 90% CBAs.
It's the same as Zera and Brayshaw. You don't expect him to do this every week. If it becomes a 2 or 3 week trend, same with Laird. Then you start.
What about
worrying,
Darcy?
But as of this week, Darcy was fine. He scored 96. He actually played really well. I think he had 23 at half time, so he had a 70-point second half.
And he had I think it was a 6 or 7 minute patch. He was either on the bench in the last goal or he just didn't touch it for 7 minutes, and still scored really well. So he left a 130 on the table on that one. Yeah,
he really did. And again, he was against Royal Marshall. He played 100% in the ruck pretty much.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Tough one. Okay, so I've got a list here. So the guys who you might want to trade out: Hopper, Cunnington, Liam Jones, Sam Flanders, potentially Ben King, Nat Fyfe, and then any left field weird option, if you're a real dumbass and started Hunter Clark, those types of guys are potential trade outs.
How did you go with that Hunter Clark selection?
I started Hunter Clark, and I'm going to talk about that in a second.
We didn't touch on Braun at all. Bruin.
Oh, we didn't. Okay, hold on a sec. And then the potential ins: Dacos, Phillips, Horn-Francis, McKenna, Uland, Gulden, Callahan, Canelio is extensive. So
Chandler.
Chandler? Oh, Chandler as well. So all I wanted to say by taking that list is that if you do have too many of those guys and you think it's a realistic chance that you're going to need at least 2 of them next week, you might have to bring trades forward this week. So just be conscious of that.
Do the safe trades. Don't do the mid-pricer ones.
Yeah, correct.
Do the Primos ones.
Do the ones that you're confident with. Get Dacos by trading a couple of mid-pricers or a mid-pricer and a rookie or something like that. Just do those types of switches, not the, I'm going to trade this mid-pricer just to this mid-pricer and hope that guy goes well now. Those are the guys that you want to watch for another week. We were very specific this podcast in saying these are guys like Horn-Francis we just need to see for another week. Then they might force us to do the trade. Also, not this week.
Mackenzie's really good, and I don't know if we said that. He was just really, really
No, we didn't say that, but yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah, Bruin.
Okay, so Bruin, just quickly on Bruin. So he played a really good first half and he was getting CBAs and he looked amazing in the CBAs. And then Stewart got injured at some point around that halftime mark. Was that during the second quarter?
Sorry, I'm in the middle of yawning.
If I'm boring you, you can jump off. It's okay.
I'm waiting for our ad break.
I'm so sorry, Cheezo. I forgot the ad break again. So there's going to be an ad break at some point earlier than this point because he puts it at about halfway.
All right, well, I was probably leaving this in then. So we must continue. What was your question, sorry?
Oh, boy. I have to repeat myself as well. I didn't know when Stewart had the leg injury.
Oh yeah, it was right in he only got subbed at halftime, but it was right at the beginning of the game, like 10 minutes.
So halftime though. So Parfitt came on at halftime, and then Bruin moved to a wing. And I think it's the stupidest thing ever. So Tui got moved into defence, Parfitt got moved into the middle, and then Bruin got moved onto the wing role. And Bruin was doing really well in the midfield.
His first half was good, yeah.
His first half was exactly what we started him for, and then he did barely anything on the wing, because the wing's a tough place to play, especially if you're not a dedicated winger.
And when you're getting trounced by Collingwood's midfield as well.
So Parfitt then had 41% TOG and had... how many? 5 handballs.
Yeah.
For the entire second half. He was really, really bad. And I expect their structure to reset and go back to what they want to go into the game with. And I don't expect Parfitt to be a part of that. And I do expect Bruin to be a part of that midfield group again. So Bruin, for me, is definitely another 1 weeker, another 1 week hold, and see what he does next week. Not to mention the Collingwood midfield was really hot this game.
So hot.
There weren't a lot of opportunities for Geelong midfield at all. But regardless, Bruin, I think, is a very easy hold. And then we'll assess next week. But he then goes on to that list of the outs, where he's a very highly potential out next week as well.
Yeah, so...
I see him like Hopper.
Yeah, I think that's good overall advice. Again, team-specific circumstances may prevail. If you have too many mid-prices like myself with Ash and Hopper and Bruin, I mean, Setterfield's okay, but I feel like I need to make a move on at least one of them now so that I can do all my trades for next week if I have any rookie sidewayses to do. So I'm kind of picking which ones I want to get rid of. So obviously Ash going to Dacos and Bruin going to Gulden kind of makes the most logical sense to me. I do think Bruin could be fine, and then a trade out later. But I guess my concern is the time on ground for like Dangerfield was really low. I think it was like 62%, and Bruins was also in the 60s. And it just makes me think, well, you know, what happens when Danger gets 80% time on ground? That's going to come from somewhere. So if time on ground is going to be a concern for Bruin moving forward, it doesn't really matter what his role is if his time on ground's really low. He's not going to be like the Will Brodie type where he scores 100 because he's just like so contested and gets so many quick touches. Like he's not at that level. So I'm just backing my gut on that, feeling like that time on ground is going to be a bigger issue than role, and making a swift cut early, but understandably might be premature.
I also didn't mention that in these ins and outs, as Stewart owners now know, the injuries do happen as well. And if you like, obviously, if you see 1 or 2 trades that you might need to make, and then also factor in that there are injuries in this game, they do happen. I don't want to jinx anyone or anything like that, but just plan for the fact that there might be a forced trade somewhere, and you might also need to get 2 guys and use a boost. So I'm just saying, I've seen a lot of YouTubers come out and say, oh, we're double boosting, and people respond really, I think it's concern. The response is more concern, like we're wasting trades or we're going into this a bit too brash. But I think we really do need to consider, I'm boosting this week personally, but my team's probably a lot worse than a lot of people that I'm speaking to now. But I think it's a boost type of week. I think 90% of the competition should be using a boost this week or
what
next.
Am I talking about your trades? Like I'm surprised that you're boosting.
How about this? Cheezo, cut to the ad. Okay, so let's have a little discussion about our trades and captaincy, and then we'll quickly jump into a couple more talking points. I know this is going to be a long podcast, but it is what it is. It's round 1. Watch it in 2 parts if you want hour-long podcasts. First of all, the trades that I'm doing, or the trades that I'm looking at doing, I personally need to move Hunter Clark out of my team. I did not want to start Hunter Clark. I only started Hunter Clark because of both Yo and Crozier going out and Phillips going out. Really shook my team up. A lot of things changed, and I threw him in there. Absolute cardinal sin. I fully regret it. I've never done anything like that in my Supercoach career. Like, don't throwing someone in there that I don't believe in, that I didn't research all preseason, that I didn't know enough about. But I don't know why I was lazy with it. I just did it, and he needs to go. He was not good enough. I watched him very closely. His time on ground is bad. He's either in the midfield or on the bench. And although he got enough disposals, he butchers them. He doesn't tackle hard enough, etc. He's out. He's got to go. So I've got to get Hunter Clark out. So from my perspective, Hunter Clark was my D2. So I'm going to Dacos somehow, some way. So the likely way into that is Ash down to Callahan or Stocker, which I don't mind either option.
Just pending Constables, if he's in or out, you can kind of plan around it.
Well, the thing is if I go Ash to Stocker, then Constable just goes off field for someone like Philippou if he's out.
Yeah.
And it gives me a lot of options.
Yeah.
Like I can swing him around to any line. So the other option for trading is like a Jones down to a Cole to free up a bit more money. So I'm not certain where that last bit of money is going to come from, but I do need a little bit more cash to do the trades. But it's going to come from somewhere, and it's going to be one of these guys that was spoken about, the Liam Joneses. I'm going to hold Hopper regardless. I'm also going to hold Bruin regardless. Those guys, I'm giving one more week. I'm obviously holding Laird. So it's really a limited number of players then that were really disappointing and failed every possible test that I had for them. And someone like Liam Jones is on that list at the moment. I know he can bounce back, but 4.5 of football, which scaled up to 5 somehow. And now hit or miss for this week, I think is almost enough for me to just pull that trigger.
It's better if he misses. You get that loop.
That's true. That's very true. Him missing might actually make me not do it, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. If Cowan goes nuts on Friday.
But regardless, I think I need to do 3 corrections this week and potentially 3 next week, depending on a few players. And I'm okay with that. I didn't start with an ideal team. I feel like a few things factored into that, which we're going to chat about soon. But I'm okay with that. I don't think that's being too aggressive. I think it's being exactly reactive to what we need to be reactive to. We need to understand where we failed and where we succeeded in making our starting team with the information that we have. And I know waiting for a second week price point is ideal, but we're not going to have that opportunity because there are about 12 guys that did really well or really poorly in and out of our team that we need to assess and look at trading in the next 2 weeks before prices move. Including next week, which is where we want to look at most of the rookies for a second time. There are at least 2 rookies that I think are a chance to enter my team next week from that list, and I'm not getting them this week. No way. So
sure,
I think it really pigeonholes me into doing this, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with being a bit more aggressive on this at this point of the season, because if I'm not doing it now, if I'm not playing to win in round 1 and 2 before price changes, then I'm playing for like a safe top 10k finish, and it's between 5 and 10 in all my leagues, and just being happy with that. And I don't want another mediocre year for myself. So that is where my aggressiveness comes from, and I think it's fine.
All right, that's fine. I mean, if I had to think of last season, I waited at the end of round 1 to make a trade, and then I just figured that not all of Cripps and Hewitt and English, I guess I wasn't even looking at Sicily at the time, but I figured all those guys and Sherry as well wouldn't all do well, and then I wouldn't be able to get all of them, and they all did well, and I was only able to fix 1 rookie, got Sherry in, got Cripps, and wasn't able to get Hewitt because I just hadn't used my trades wisely before round 3. So I missed out, and then the prices changed, and then obviously I couldn't afford them for a little while. So being, I guess, hyper aggressive before the prices change, yeah, you might run out of trades at the end of the year, and that's okay, but you also might not, and that might be okay too. But at least you'll have a better team. And at the end of the day, JB, one person's going to win. The rest of us are in it, and what we want to get out of it is either winning your leagues or having fun. And it's really hard to have fun if your team is bad.
Yeah. And I think being conservative might suit some players, and I understand that method. But for me, I don't want to be conservative with this team. There are a lot of teams I've seen where I'm like, yeah, you know what, I'd probably be pretty relaxed with that team. But mine is not one of them. And I'm more than happy to get on the front foot and say, I messed up on a lot of my starting selections and went against my better judgment with a lot of my picks, and I regret it heavily. And I'm gonna do what I can to sort of rectify that. And that's okay. I think we're all still young coaches in this game, and I think we still have room to improve. And that is what I want to talk about shortly. But let's quickly get into some captaincy chitter-chatter before we go into anything else.
Yeah, I'm boosting as well, but yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I was going to talk about your trades in a second. I'm sorry, but I'm a bit all over the shop. But quickly, all right, let's talk about your trades first.
Okay. No, I said
had the whole
before.
philosophy chat, so let's just say your trades.
No, I actually really like my, I guess, price points in my team that I chose. I think I did a lot of things really well. I mean, my score obviously doesn't reflect it, but I think a lot of that was circumstantial. I left myself with lots of options because of the way I structured my side, and that was an active plan that I wanted to do going into it. I mean, I was choosing between, sorry, JB, I was choosing between Hunter Clark and Setterfield, and chose Setterfield on purpose so that I could push Cam McKenzie to the bench, which ended up not being good. But I think just like structurally, it suited my side. And because of that, I have really good outs. I think trading Kelly to Callahan and then being able to upgrade Ash, who looks like a failed mid-pricer, and Bruin, who also looks like a failed mid-pricer early days, to Gulden and Dacos, getting 2 premiums for the one, and both I don't think will be... It's not like the same scariness of trading in a Horn Francis or a Ziebell. Like I think both of them I'm quite confident in, and that sets my... Basically, I love all of my picks and my entire team after that. So I feel like that's very good, a good use of a boost.
Yeah, it's the perfect use of a boost. And I remember a lot of people still left with their boost after pretty much the buy rounds last year, and they're full premium, and they're like, oh, I've still got these boosts. And it's like, yeah, well, now what do you want to do with them?
No,
we got 5 of these, which feels like actually too many.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy that I actually don't think I'm going to end up boosting next week. It's every chance I only use 1 trade next week. Just doing like Jones if he's whatever to a rookie. I think that's the likely use of the boost, and then I just use of a trade, and I end up just using 4 over the 2 weeks, which won't be. I think dissimilar to other years. When
I look at it, there's a chance I do Hopper and Bruin out next week.
Yeah.
And then the only way I boost next week is if Laird is again really bad. But otherwise, I'll just be utilising Hopper's and Bruin's money to get Gulden in my side, and that's it.
Yeah, Laird's a big one for us. That could change a lot.
He's the only one that could make me boost next week, I believe, unless there's like a big injury.
Yeah,
okay, so let's quickly talk about captaincy. So I think it's pretty easily for Laird owners that they go VC Laird. Yes, I have faith into a captain from GWS, which can be either Green or Kelly, depending on who you like more. But I think I'll go Green.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really...
Sorry, Green or Cogs, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, those are both really good options. I think there are a lot of other decent options as well. The problem with Laird is you kind of want to VC him, but at the same time, he might not even be the best VC option. It might be worth just ignoring him entirely. Who
do you think's better? I know who you're going to say, but say it anyway.
Oh, now the pressure's on. I'm going to say Gulden.
Okay, say someone else.
Don't pick that guy. I wasn't thinking of that guy.
That was an intentional mischievous thing by you.
No, it could be Sean Darcy. Could be Witts. Could be Gorn.
Okay. Now you're intentionally doing this.
I'm looking at a ruckman, personally.
Okay, Bontempelli against St Kilda has a very, very good history, but I'll be very surprised if either Bytel or Winhager don't go to Bont. Whichever one is named, which I think will be Winhager, I'll be very surprised if he doesn't go to Bont.
So Lobb's out, JB. That news just came out. So I guess if they bring in Sweet, is that that's good for Bont? But if they just don't, I don't know who they're going to have to bring in. If Jones is out, they might bring in.
Is Waitman back?
No, he's not. But if Bruce has to come in for Jones, maybe they might play Bont forward. So
Bruce was already in.
yeah, but if he comes in, yeah, right, yeah. If they bring in another defender for Jones, if Jones is out,
could they move Bruce back forward? I'd be
well, then
very
they need
surprised
two
if they moved
defenders.
Bruce back
They need to
forward.
bring two defenders to do
Yeah.
that. It might work out that Bont plays forward if Sweet doesn't come in. So that's why I would. It's a little bit scary.
Yeah, I don't mind.
What about Dacos?
Like, I don't mind either of the Brisbane boys against Melbourne. I don't think Melbourne are particularly restrictive in terms of their things, but I think Doherty in the Dacos role last week against Geelong, who obviously don't tag half-backers.
Yeah, it's true.
I think has potential as well, and he should have, could have, would have gone big this week, but just didn't.
Doherty's a decent shout. I think I'll just do Laird into Wits.
I think there are good options. I think Laird into GWS player is my play for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to go past.
Okay, so I just want to quickly talk about this. Podcast has gone too long, so it's not going to be as long a segment as what I thought it would be.
We're already almost 2 hours in. There's no point rushing now. Just get it out. Whatever it has to do.
It's true.
I don't even know what the segment is.
Firstly, okay, this is just us as SuperCoach players, as in you, me, Sheezel, the wider community, content creators, players in general, as SuperCoach players.
Okay.
Firstly, I think we overrate tags and tagging in the game when we do our picks. I think Dacos getting tagged in the preseason clearly changed his percentage from 50% ownership to like 38%. So clearly other people were doing this as well, which is why I'm bringing it up. But he also pushed him out of my team. And then I thought, what if he just is good outside of those games? And he still scored 70 with Finn McGuinness on him. So what if he's just like good enough? And I just don't think we give credit enough to the good players. They're going to be good outside the tag, especially non-midfield players who are not uber premium priced. So Dacos, I think, was a huge oversight by us. I'm starting to think that we overrate the tag.
So let me get this right.
As we saw with Hopper, it might just not happen.
Let me get this right. What you're saying isn't the tags don't exist or don't exist in the number we expected.
No,
but what you're saying is that we overrate the impact a tag may have.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the games outside of that tag. If Dacos leads into those maybe 2 or 3 tag games with a couple of big scores, and then he gets held to a couple of 70s or 80s, and then has a couple of big scores after that, his price isn't even. It's not affected to the point where you go, oh man, I'm so glad I didn't start Dacos. We still needed to start Dacos. It was an oversight.
Early days, round one. But yeah, I agree with you,
you know what I'm saying.
In that we overrate the, I guess, severity of a tag. I think there's some, not misconception, because obviously people are allowed their own opinions. People are like, oh, well, teams don't tag as much because only two teams tagged this weekend. But I disagree with that statement specifically, just because I think it's matchup dependent, right? If there's no one worth tagging, they're not going to tag anyone. And if there's someone worth tagging, they will tag them. And it needs to have the right players in their team to do the tag, which can vary different week. I think tags are very, I think it'll be more than 2 on average, across the season. And that will keep happening. But the severity of the tag might not be as bad as what we were thinking. So just to make that clear.
It might be a half-time tag because someone started really low and, all of a sudden they only need 30 points for a ton from half-time, and the tag is impactful, but it's not like they're not getting held to 50 or 60 like we've seen with some players. But some players can get tagged more than others. That's what I'm saying. So I still agree, like Zach Merritt, Andrew Brayshaw, Darcy Parish to an extent as well. I still agree that some players are still really taggable, and in those instances you would rather wait for a really low spike game. But I think in most instances we overrate it, and I think that's important to acknowledge as well. The next thing I wanted to talk about, not the only other thing.
I didn't have my phone on me to be able to tell how much Merritt went with the Finn McGuinness tag this week, so I can't make a comment.
It was like a low ton or is it high 90s? It was one of the two.
All right, I think it was in the 90s off the top of my head, like 92 or something like that. But yeah, it wasn't like disastrous.
No, it wasn't disastrous. There are instances where it has been disastrous, but yeah, more than Laird, who apparently didn't get tagged. So he ended up with 92, yeah. So good job by you. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the preseason.
Okay.
Oh, my days. I still, after so many years, do not know how to navigate the preseason and where to weight my opinion, because I thought from Ash's performance in the preseason that he would be one of their go-to guys, the Orange Tsunami, yada, yada. Now I've said it, so I'm upset at myself. And he just clearly wasn't. And I feel like it's really difficult to understand the information as it is. Now they've brought it down to just one game, which makes it even more difficult. Coaches clearly still don't roll out the correct or what they plan on rolling out in season proper, as we've seen with North Melbourne, Cunnington, Sheezel, Simpkin. And I think the amount that my team changes based on my first initial gut feeling compared to my over-analytical preseason feeling is too much. It's crazy. LDU was in my team before the preseason. Dacos and Hayden Young were in my team before the preseason. And I know it's too early to make calls on these guys. Like, oh, see, they were obviously successful picks. But so many guys left my team due to the preseason. Yeah. And now I look at it and go, why did it have so much? It was a poor game by that player, but the role was still probably fine. And why did it force them all the way out of my team?
Yeah, the LDU one stings. He was in my team picker team and had him until his game and then took him out. And at the SuperCoach launch event, when I was talking to some of the guys there, I'm like, why am I just not picking LDU? Like, he's clearly going to be good. And he's ticked all the breakout boxes. And then I just didn't pick him. And I just really thought he would be good and didn't do it. And then I'm like, well,
thank God Tom Green had a good preseason, because if we didn't start him based on our preseason on
him,
disaster. So I did want to quickly mention that. I think this is so important to remember for next year.
But the thing is, it's actually hard because most of the preseason picks have gone very well. I don't think there's any preseason picks that I can think of off the top of my head. I was going to say surely we got saved by the preseason on one or two picks, but off the top of my head, I can't really think of any that I got saved from.
No.
Yeah, I can't think of any. Oh, well.
It's more so it revealed the Warples, the Setterfields, the guys with improved roles, the Guldens even.
I guess it saved us from Jack Steele. He was someone I was still considering up until the day. I mean,
but
still
his
might
role
be good.
was perfect.
He still might be really good.
His role was perfect.
Saved us from that one bad score.
Yeah, he just might not be as incredible as he was 2 years ago, but his role was still very good. There's still a chance we get him. But, and Laird had 150 in the preseason game and now looks like a shell of himself. But that's again, why I've got confidence in Laird, because I know he's still that guy this year. But
just didn't happen.
Yeah, the 590, it would have sucked so many people in just because it was a 90 in the forward line. And they're like, okay, he's still going to do the things. But the Cunnington role would have sucked so many people in as well. I just think we need to be a lot more selective. McKenna, a lot of people were scared off McKenna.
Yeah.
But he has the history and everything. So I think we need
might
to be
a
more
good
selective
reflection at the end of this year. As well, just because we're only going off one round of data.
This is a round one reaction. I do agree.
We'll see. Everything might be flipped by round two even.
Next thing, I think there was enough guns and rookies to do that. To do a guns and rookies with maybe one, maybe two mid prices. And in the last two seasons, I think we've gone way too heavy on the mid prices. Again, round one reaction. I get that, but Bruin, Hopper, Ash, Hunter Clark, you could even say Liam Jones, all in my starting team. I'm trying to think of if there was another one. Maybe not. And then Elliot Yeo, Warple, and several others all went through my team in the preseason. And I didn't look at it almost really any 13 premium teams, let alone, barely any 12 premium teams. I think we're overreacting with that structure, but it's too early to tell. I just want to put it on the radar.
I had a 13 premium team until the final preseason game, and I was really keen on trying to squeeze in the 13th premium, and then went down to 12 and had worked out the entire preseason team. The only non-12 premium team I had was on the day of the Thursday night when all those players weren't named, and I restructured. That was the first time I ever had an 11 premium team. I'm not sure all the rookies were there unless you took everyone in the back line. So structurally, I think 12 was viable, but 13 probably not viable, just because you couldn't get all the cheap premiums in and still fill your bench with the rookies, because the rookies would be in the forward line and they were more expensive. So I don't think that worked out that way. But yeah, 12. I think 12 was probably the right call, not 11. However,
but we said this at the beginning of last year, and we didn't learn from it.
I mean, look, I'm fixing that this week, and I'll go back to the 12 and be really happy with my team.
Yeah, and I'm also fixing it too.
To be fair,
we're quickly reacting to it. But
you get the mid prices. It's not just the fact that hey, they might break out and be keepers. It's more they let me have these price points where I could use them as plans of attack to get players that I needed. Like, because Bruin's in the forward line, I'm able to get Gulden from him. And, because of, I guess, the DP in the midfield and the way that it's set up, like, I'm able to get Dacos for it.
But we should have just started those guys. Like, they were still obvious preseason selections to us, because, I mean, Dacos had a worse score, but we overrated the tag, in my opinion. But Gulden's role was like, in
I
our
had Gulden
faces,
F5 literally up until
I know you did, and I didn't. But every time I didn't, it was because I was like, yeah, he probably averages in the 90s, but there was no real justification for that. It was just like I fobbed him off because he was too hard to fit into the structure that I already had, and I think I was just stubborn. I think that's bad coaching and bad for the people that I was sort of recommending my team structure to.
I was so hot on Gulden F5. I'm so annoyed at myself that I didn't do that.
Yeah, and there were a lot of players like JC that I was hot on that I didn't roll with, and they were the correct pick. And I'm not saying we should get everything right. And I just remember back to years ago when I was one of those guys commenting on the Twitter post saying, I can't believe people fall for these types of players every year. And it's the Bruins, it's the
Josh
Hoppers,
Kellys.
it's the Cunningtons, it's the Flanders. Like we did talk about Flanders, but it's those types of guys where I comment. Though. No, we weren't. But I would comment and say, I can't believe people fall for this guy every year. And it's like, yeah, but now I'm trying to fit like 5 of them into my structure in the last 2 preseasons, and it has not worked out one bit. Like, we started Mitch McGovern last year, and like, it's just, I don't know. It seems to me like we've gone down this path, and
I think last year's different than this year, though. You can't. Every year's different.
I know I get every year's different, but it's back-to-back years where Hewitt and Cripps is the Gulden and Dacos of this year, and it's like we just have ignored them.
Are different price points. The Gulden,
but they were so highly owned. Those 4 players come into the last 2 seasons so highly owned, and we're not.
No, but Gulden and Dacos are like you're picking them as premiums and keepers. When you're picking a 450k midfielder, that's neither here nor there. And when you're picking a 399k defender, that's a genuine mid price.
People picked them thinking they would be premiums.
Yeah, I know, and then obviously I thought that was crazy, and that was wrong, and it worked out.
Like,
but that was last year. There were so many of those guys. I know it's
circumstantial. I'm not.
This year there were.
I'm not trying to rag on us. I'm not trying to rag on us for picking certain guys or not picking certain guys. I'm just trying to adjust our mentality a bit, because I think the 36 trades has sent us a little bit too far down a path, and
you just want to reel it back.
We need to remember next year. We need to reel it back just a little bit.
But I mean, if the mid prices are there next year, I'll be going mid prices. I mean, it just depends on the person. I probably shouldn't be considering a Jack Bowes early on, but I'd still consider Yo, because I think Yo could have been a keeper.
Well, Yo was different. Yo has the history more.
But Ash was never going to be a keeper. So what were we doing?
What were we doing with Ash? Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
It doesn't really make sense. You compare the price point, Ash is the same price or more expensive than Yo. I mean, it's kind of laughable when you say it out loud.
I know. But I was so sold. Like, anyway.
Bad by you, JB.
I know it is. And I've been beating myself up for it a little bit. But
look,
like, the thing is, I know I'm a good coach, and I know I give good advice, but I think I fall into traps like anyone else does. And I just need to go into the season with a different way of looking at things, in a different perspective on things. And I think saying it out loud helps more than just saying, "Oh no, it's the boosts and the 34 trades or 36 or 35 trades, or it's COVID," or I keep coming up with reasons for why I'm having a poor start, and then not ever thinking, well, it's actually just my mentality. Like some of these guys that I started this year, Hunter Clark and Ash specifically, are laughable picks. And I don't know how I talked myself into them. I mean, Hunter Clark, I did not talk myself into.
No, you went rogue with that one, yeah.
But that was very reactionary to the teams. But I don't know how I've done this, but I've just fallen into the trap twice in a row now. And I think unless I actually front up to this, I'm not going to improve as a coach because I know I've got improvement in me. So this is a bit therapeutic, I guess.
No, I think it's good.
And hopefully for people listening as well.
I don't know. When I said it out loud, Ash and Yo being the same price, what am I doing? So bad. So bad.
Lastly, the boosts and the 36 trades. I just want to say, we spoke about it earlier incidentally anyway, but the aggressiveness that people are choosing to take or not take, I just think, I don't even really know what to say on this, but I think the mentality isn't exactly where it should be on these either. I think you need to be aggressive if you identify mistakes in your team like I do. Sitting and watching them for another week while there are like 8 guys that are other mistakes or mistakes that you started or mistakes that you didn't start, sitting and watching all of those guys for another week spells you're going to have 4 of those guys still in 3 weeks' time. Other stuff pops up, rookies come off the bubble, rookies get dropped that you need to correct. Mid prices go crazy, like the Dacoses and the Guldens appear. There are trades that we need to make by force. If you're not being aggressive at this point of the season, like we said earlier, it's really hard to imagine when you're going to be aggressive with your team, especially if you identify mistakes in there. So that's something that I've talked myself into now this year, is I can't just sit and watch my team burn to the ground and go, I'll just make 2 trades next week and I'll save those 5 boosts. Because you can't cash in those boosts for points. They don't redeem them. You can't redeem them at the end of the year for like a free Starbucks coffee or something. They go away. You have to utilize them. And I think it's really important to start the season to be able to utilize these things that we never had access to. If I was only making 4 trades in the next 2 weeks, my team in round 3 would still be horrible. I'll guarantee you that. So
I've seen
it's just, I don't know. I know, so have I. It's on my screen right now, and I'm struggling to talk while distracted by the hideousness. But I want the listeners to really understand that it's not trading for the sake of trading. It's not just having trades and burning a hole. And there are so many teams that I've seen where I go, you just should not trade this week. Like, you're in such a better position. They probably have one of Gulden or Dacos, to be honest. And I say, you know what, you just hold tight for the next guy who might be, a must trading next week. But you don't have to react like I do because your team is better. But there are guys with teams similar to mine. Unfortunately, too many of them, especially in our Slack. And I apologize for the bad start, but that we just need to be aggressive. We need to get the ball rolling on this team. Otherwise, it's just going to decay and it's going to get worse.
Yeah, I'm happy to use boosts early. I think an interesting part about the boosts last year was I think a way people were using them wasn't necessarily to like double downgrade a rookie and do an upgrade, which is how I had anticipated the boosts would be used. Yeah. But people were like doing their 1 up, 1 down, and then some people were doing like a 1 sideways of a rookie to a flyer like Darcy Cameron, who no one ever, even after 1 round, didn't expect him to, dominate. The Himmelberg types, and kind of bringing in these cheaper premiums that have just like knocked off 4 tons in a row, and you're like, you know what, it might not work out. It might work out. Why didn't I just give it a crack with my boost? And people were doing that a lot, and that seemed to pay off last year. I don't know if that's going to happen again this year because obviously who can't predict the future. But if that doesn't happen, then then our boosts are probably not. I don't know. I feel like the best value you get for your boost is fixing structures rather than like individual players is basically where I'm going with it. So using them now to be able to get the good players on the hot start before the season, before the prices change, and get your optimal structure going into round 3 will be more important than any other reason really to boost throughout the whole season.
I just want to finish on, I do appreciate everyone who's still tuning in. We did have a poor start to the season last year, and we tried to pivot as quickly as possible, but just couldn't catch up to some of the freight trains that had gotten ahead of us.
I just didn't pivot last year properly.
Yeah, not properly. This year, I wouldn't say it's a bad season. I still think we're really close to the top.
This was, I feel so like I've left, looking at my team, like I left like 180 points on the table. Like, that's unlucky. I don't feel as bad about my team as I did last year, but I'm ranked 15k worse in round one than last year.
But I just want to say, if you're still tuning in, if you're still taking the advice, if you're going to give us a chance to sort of get us out of where we're in right now, which I still don't think is as bad behind the eight ball as what it could be. We're just appreciative, I guess, and we look forward to turning the season around and turning all our ranks from, what is it, 5 figures right now into 3 or 4 figures. I'm confident that
this will be a big. Well, we're going to talk again in 3 weeks' time, JB. I think the mood's going to be very different. That's my prediction.
I agree.
Pretty confident. When am I not though?
And Port won, so it's a good week anyway.
And I guess going into next week, Pies will have won 2 games and we'll be sitting pretty happily.
Should we? I feel like we should put together some sort of arrangement for the match.
All right, we'll work it out off the podcast.
Yes, it's always better to do these off the podcast with no pressure of listeners. All right, so thanks everyone for tuning in. Obviously, you can find me at JB_DRSC, Pistol_DRSC, and Sheezel_DRSC. Obviously,
and don't forget, JB, this week as well, round 1, we will have our first article for the season, Code Sports. Check them out. Don't forget that there is a current Dr. Supercoach patron-only offer, $1 for 3 months, and that gets you to round 12, or if you just do it now, to round 13.
That includes Supercoach Gold as well.
Yeah, Supercoach Plus, it's now called, but that's a big deal, especially early parts of the season where you want to use all the trades and everything. So you can find that offer on our Patreon, and I'll reset it at some stage this week as well, just so you can check it out.
Just in time for the last coach standing as well. If you sign up to that in the next couple of weeks, you'll be in our Patreon
that as well. There's a couple of quick announcements. The last coach standing will obviously be going ahead this year. I'll be posting the code to join the group this week on our Patreon, so make sure it's a free to enter competition free to enter once you're already a patron. I don't know if that's the correct way to advertise that, JB, but either way, that will be getting done this week. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.